Chapter 16:26. The kings turned around and looked at Chu Feng with strange expressions. The battling, raging Monkey King was more straightforward. He asked directly, "What did you do back then?" Chu Feng felt that he was more wrong than Dou-yi. How many years had passed? How could there still be people who remembered his elegant name? Besides, he had fought for his homeland and sold the aliens to the families of the Divine Sons and Saintesses for ransom. He could be considered half a local hero. Who was undermining him? Chu Feng wanted to strangle him to death. However, the immortal kings around him didn't think so. Their eyes were blue and green, which was quite strange. The kings felt that this kid must have done something bad back then. How could he be called a human trafficker after returning to his homeland? Some immortal kings even reminded the juniors around them to stay away from this demon. I was wondering who it was. The defeated ones back then, you aliens are back. Hordes of divine sons and saintesses are invading my homeland again. Are you waiting for me to come back and kill all of you? Chu Feng saw a few familiar people. He seemed to have sold them back then, so he had some impression of them. In front of him, an outer realm divine son's face was a bit pale. He immediately explained, "It's a misunderstanding. Great Demon Chu, no, Great Divine King Chu, we were just being outspoken. We didn't mean any harm. We were really shocked just now. Everyone said you disappeared and might have died. I didn't expect you to reappear in this world." "What outspoken? What do you mean I might have died? Do you know how to speak? If you don't, shut up," Chu Feng rebuked. "We really didn't attack this planet. It's mainly because there are many secret realms here. There are famous mountains and roads that connect all the stars. This place has become a node where myriad realms converge. It's unprecedentedly prosperous. We only came here to travel and trade treasures." According to him, this place had become a new paradise in the evolutionary world and was incomparably attractive. Besides, there's an indescribable almighty guarding this place. We don't dare to be presumptuous. In the past, there seemed to be a stone fox that went crazy and destroyed a powerful race in the universe. No one dares to behave atrociously here anymore. When he heard these words, Chu Feng let out a sigh of relief. He felt quite gratified. Back then, he had asked Sure who to take care of his homeland. "You can leave. I don't want to see you anymore. If you dare to call me a human trafficker again, the next time I catch you, I'll chop the man's penis into pieces and feed it to the tortoise. If you're crippled, you'll have to go to the black mines again. And if you're crippled, you'll have to make a bed for me to order around," Chu Feng warned sternly. After hearing this, the few of them felt as if they had been granted amnesty and immediately fled without a trace. It was too frightening. It was still the same recipe and the same taste. Chu Maheng had been gone for a long time, but the human traffickers had never changed. The divine sons and saintesses could be considered the pride of their respective races. But now, all of them were pale and didn't even dare to look back as they ran. Below them, there were boundless blue waves and islands scattered like stars in the sky. A few evolvers were flying at low altitudes, while various sea beasts appeared on the surface of the sea. There were even flood dragons stirring up the waves. Chu Feng sighed as he gazed at the vast sea below. He thought of the dragon lair at the bottom of the sea and the disputes and confrontations with the marine race. At the same time, he also thought of the dragoness. Back then, she stood on his side and fought shoulder to shoulder with him. In the end, she died beside the great abyss in the starry skies and was killed by the Taiwu. "Goodbye, dragoness," Chu Feng murmured as he burned some paper money on the surface of the sea. Some evolvers and marine race people saw this and wanted to berate him. In the end, all of them shrank their heads back immediately and their faces turned green. Who was that? What did they see? Where were they? Had time been reversed? Had the era of Chu Feng wreaking havoc in the world returned? No, it's not goodbye. I believe you've reincarnated successfully. You've eaten the dragonization fruit and gained innate wisdom. I believe I'll see you again one day. Chu Feng shouted at the great sea. Since Yellow Cattle, Ouyang Feng, and Dong Dahu could reappear, he believed that the dragoness would also appear before him one day. The kings behind him were all old antiques and living fossils. Their faces were expressionless, but the few youngsters who followed him revealed odd expressions. They sighed inwardly and sighed inwardly. Chu Feng headed west. As expected, the sea was bustling with activity along the way. Many evolvers from the outer realms were coming and going. Their flying tools included magical treasures and airships. They entered and left the underwater world and entered various islands. Very soon, he entered land. The famed mountains were magnificent and surging with auspicious qi. It was quite imposing. Chu Feng didn't stop and headed west toward Mount Kunlun. Sigh, how melancholic. This king once occupied a mountain here and was one of the leaders who participated in the East-West War. But now, I can no longer see those old friends, said the Black Yak. He wasn't strong enough and couldn't walk at the very front with the other kings like Chu Feng. But now, he was also disappointed and frustrated. Chu Feng slowed down his pace and arrived at the back of the group. He walked together with Yellow Cattle, Dong Dahu, and Old Black. They all sighed and then fell silent. Too many things had happened here. Chu Feng was also very regretful. Perhaps he would never see some people again. Although he had sent those great demons of Kunlun to reincarnate, it was impossible for everyone to return with their memories. Even his parents hadn't received any news from them. Chu Feng stood on a peak of Mount Kunlun and surveyed the vast mountains and seas. The majestic mountains stretched out in a continuous stretch and carried countless memories. He thought of too many people. The bald-headed Horse King was bold and unrestrained. Back then, he had been clamoring about marrying his daughter to Chu Feng. Back then, the Horse King had also been killed by Tai Wu in the starry skies and left in response to the calamity. Even his master, the old Llama, had his blood splattered across the starry skies. There was also the Mastiff King, who had an unyielding personality and couldn't bear to be humiliated. There was also the old ape who had founded the Great Woods Temple on Mount Song and the old Grandmaster of Mount Wudong, Wu Chifeng. These people had all gone to Kunlun and later participated in the Battle of the Abyss. Chu Feng really hoped that they could reappear. At this moment, the Dog Emperor also let out a long sigh and said, Kunlun was once the hometown of an old friend of mine. I haven't seen it for many years. It's most likely ashes to ashes and dust to dust. A hero has already entered the yellow earth. There's a hero among your abnormal race friends? Birds of a feather flock together. Why do I feel that this isn't very possible? Nine Dowie asked. Wolf, do you know who I'm talking about? The Dog Emperor glared and said, Celestial Emperor's mount, the dragon horse. Back then, it came from Mount Kunlun. After that, Chu Feng headed west. He flew over the mountains and crossed the ocean to reach West Earth. He wanted to take a look at all the roads he had walked before. That was because he didn't know when he would be able to return after today. This might be the last time he would bid farewell to the mortal world. His footprints were left on Mount Olympus in a certain holy city. In the end, he stopped near a volcano. Back then, the immortal Phoenix King had died and was reborn as an egg. It was here that she lay dormant. At this moment, he unexpectedly discovered a palace with torrential flames. Moreover, he unexpectedly discovered the Phoenix King. Back then, the Black Phoenix had actually come back to life, breaking out of its shell and being reborn. Chu Feng recalled what had happened back then. The Phoenix King had lost her memory and became his blind date. That scene was truly regrettable. Youth couldn't start over again. From afar, he saw the slender figure of the Phoenix King. Her black hair draped over her shoulders as she stood in the palace. Chu Feng naturally thought of another blind date, Xia Qinyu. He had promised her in Jianglu Ocean that he would send them back to Earth. Now that the mastermind of Earth had left, Chu Feng felt that he could send the two girls back next time and fulfill his promise. Who are you? The Phoenix King discovered Chu Feng. He had already stepped into the palace. As for the other kings, they didn't follow. They were still quite a distance away from the volcano. Chu Feng sighed. This old friend had forgotten everything after rebirth. That was fine. They could forget each other in the pugilistic world and sever the fetters of the mortal world. However, if the other party was in trouble, he would still lend a helping hand. I'm a former friend of yours. I'll come to see you. After saying this, Chu Feng left behind a scripture and some medicinal herbs on the table. He then turned around and left. You look familiar. Who exactly are you? The Phoenix King inquired from behind, but Chu Feng had disappeared in an instant. Chu Feng had returned from the West Earth to the East. Many of the people he wanted to see were no longer in this world. He felt somewhat sad. However, there were still many familiar faces. Those classmates and old friends. Should he go and meet them one by one? Forget it. I have a group of immortal kings with me. Both sides will feel uncomfortable if I go and reminisce with them. Moreover, he could be considered a troublesome character now. His enemies' levels were too high. It would be bad if his classmates and old friends were to be implicated. Chu Feng was going to sever his ties with the world of mortals and step onto a path of no return. He had returned this time to, firstly, get help from the mastermind, and secondly, bid farewell to his past in the world of mortals. He no longer wanted to reminisce with those he was familiar with. After all, his future path would be incomparably difficult and dangerous. He might implicate those related to him. However, after he returned to the East, there was someone with remarkable abilities who immediately found him. Hollow Jade Temple's Lu Tong. This old man had a head full of white hair, and his eyes were filled with hot tears. Stinky brat, you didn't even come to see me after you returned? Chu Feng's eyes were also slightly moist. This old man had taken good care of him in the past, and didn't hesitate to betray the Hollow Jade Temple's palace master. I didn't know you were still on Earth. I was afraid you would be infected with great karma because of me, said Chu Feng softly. At this moment, his heart was filled with deep emotions. He thought of all the old matters of the past. How could all kinds of affection be severed just like that? The world of mortals couldn't be severed. How could it be severed? If one were to truly sever it and throw it away, one would lose the most intrinsic emotions of a living creature. It would be flawed. Chu Feng stepped forward and supported the white-haired Lu Tong's arm. I don't care. I don't care about any great karma. Old Lu Tong said resolutely. He had long since become the person in charge of the Hollow Jade Temple. Afterward, he began to ramble. Those who worked with you back then, Misty Qingru, clairvoyant Du Huaijin, and clairaudient Ouyang Qing, ran into the starry skies. It said that they were taken as nether species and were successfully brought to the world of the living. This old man also went to try his luck, but I couldn't bear to leave. I missed my homeland and wandered for a few years before returning from the starry skies. If you meet Yi Qingru and the others, you must take good care of them. I'm old, so I won't leave. Whether I live or die, I'll stay in this homeland. Chu Feng nodded in agreement. Because of this, he parted ways with the other kings and chatted with the old man for a long time. Both of them had too many things to say, because both of them had a feeling that after this separation, they might never meet again in this lifetime. Even though Chu Feng had left him many great medicines and some secret scriptures, the old man's innate talents wouldn't allow him to achieve much. There would always be parting in life, but it would be difficult to meet again after waving goodbye. Chu Feng silently bid farewell to Lu Tong. He couldn't stay behind. Now, his cultivation, his future path, and the karma he would bear in the future would all head into the vast universe. He hoped that the mysteries would be destroyed as soon as possible and the inauspiciousness eradicated. This was his wish. Otherwise, there would come a day when the heavens would be overturned. Lu Tong and all his old friends might turn into nothingness and become sand on his fingertips. He couldn't protect them, nor could he keep them. Where had heavenly venerable stone fox gone? Chu Feng walked around in a big circle, but he still couldn't find this old fox. I'll find him even if I have to dig 3 feet into the ground. Then he found Nine Dowie and Monkey Mi Tion's ancestor, the battle-raging Monkey King, and asked them to help him find the stone fox. In the end, he was really dug out from the ground. Even if he was petrified, immortal kings and Tao ancestors could still dig him out if they wanted to find him. This old fellow's senses were too sharp. Others on Earth might not have noticed the abnormality, but who was he? He had sensed the confrontation between Black Hand and the Outer Realm monarchs. At this time, he had been dug out from the ground. His appearance left Chu Feng speechless. It was a small stone fox, very cute and motionless. Seeing him play dead, Chu Feng looked left and right and said, I'll just smash him. He's just a clay doll anyway. Brat, you dare. The stone fox immediately came to life. His body was covered in blood and flesh. He was now a supreme existence. How could he break free from his stone body in a place like Earth? Moreover, he had even advanced. What's wrong with you? Chu Feng was puzzled. There's a peerless great demon on Earth. I was almost scared to death when I discovered him. Although he hides in the Earth's core and hibernates, a strand of his aura is enough to make me collapse. But I can't escape. It's as if I become entangled with him. That's because I was nourished by his great Tao fragment. That's why I broke free from the stone fox body. Especially not long ago, the stone fox had almost been scared to death. That black hand had come back to life and ignored him. Now, he wanted to attack the outside world. But at that time, he didn't know Black Hand's realm or the other monarch's levels. Now, when the stone fox truly realized that he was surrounded by a group of immortal kings who had restrained their auras, he was instantly enraged. He could sense the deep malice of the entire world towards him. It's fine, old senior. Don't be afraid. Here, go talk to Senior Nine Dowie. I'm here, don't be afraid. Who's Senior Nine Dowie? The stone fox asked. A Tao ancestor. Don't be nervous. This is nothing. After hearing this, the stone fox staggered and almost fell. A Tao ancestor? Even his liver was trembling. Right, there's a tin-tailed heavenly fox among your descendants. I've pretty much passed on all the opportunities you gave me to her. Chu Feng informed the stone fox of the situation and secretly transmitted his voice, telling him to tell Nine Dowie about the matters of the other realm. Brat, did you come back to reminisce about old times? Looking for all kinds of people, chatting about all kinds of things. Where's Celestial Emperor's former residence? The Dog Emperor couldn't help but ask. Let's go, I'll bring you there. Chu Feng led the way, heading toward a small town. It was a typical Eastern town, and some of the buildings even had a classical charm. Look, this is it. Chu Feng pointed at a house that had been empty for a long time. Yellow cattle immediately revealed a strange expression. This place wasn't unfamiliar to it. Back then, it had lived here for a long time. Whose former residence is this? What kind of damn place is this? Are you sure this is where Celestial Emperor you lived? The Dog Emperor glared. Celestial Emperor's former residence is mine. Don't you think I'm a future Celestial Emperor? Chu Feng? When the Dog Emperor heard this, he immediately wanted to beat him to death. Old Emperor Gu Qing's face twitched. He really wanted to say, I haven't even collapsed yet, and you're already preparing to rebel and take the throne? However, he thought about it again. It was fine if he didn't want the throne, but it was still too early for a brat like you to usurp it. The Dog Emperor bared his teeth and said, Brat, are you going to roast yourself, or are you going to wait for me to roast you and eat you? Didn't I bring you to Celestial Emperor's former residence? This is Celestial Emperor Chu's residence. I didn't say it was Celestial Emperor Ye's, Chu Feng said with conviction. However, when he saw the Dog Emperor's unreasonable behavior and the other king's glares, he chickened out. Then, he brought everyone to a barren wilderness, telling them that this was where Celestial Emperor Yi was born. Who are you trying to fool? Some celestial kings were dissatisfied. I'm not fooling you this time. This is definitely Celestial Emperor's former residence, but everything has turned to dust. You could do a good job of rebuilding it. Chu Feng swore that he wasn't wrong this time. Everyone looked at the Dog Emperor and found that he was actually in a daze. It was actually true? How did you know about this place? The Dog Emperor asked fiercely. Ask my son in private. He awakened part of his memories and knows about this place, Chu Feng said with a smile. At this moment, the decayed corpse was stamping with rage and wanted to strangle the little Taoist to death. The little Taoist was very innocent. That father of his was shamelessly pestering him in secret. So how could he not tell him? The decayed corpse glared at him, and the Dog Emperor's face was dark and gloomy. He really wanted to howl like a wolf. Chu Feng saw everyone's unkind expressions and hurriedly diverted their attention. Let's go. I'll bring you to the place where Celestial Emperor Yi entered the starry sky. There, you can watch the starry sky and eat Celestial Emperor's delicacies. Their next stop was the peak of Mount Tai. Look, this is Jade Emperor Peak. Back then, 9 dragons carrying coffins descended from the sky and brought a group of young people who originally had dreams but accidentally entered the ancient starry sky path. Legend has it that there was one more celestial emperor in this world. Chu Feng was showing off there like a tour guide. Hey, everyone, don't pull a long face. I've already made arrangements. We'll be eating at the Celestial Emperor's banquet on Jade Emperor Peak right away. He hurriedly added. Chu Feng introduced in a carefree manner and said, what 8 major cuisines, what Manchu Han Imperial Feast, what street barbecue, what specialty snacks. As long as it's food that can be bought, there's nothing I can't transport. Are you sure that Celestial Emperor has eaten all of this before? A Celestial King questioned. Of course, ever since that person and Celestial Emperor you walked out of this place. Blackhand also revived at some unknown epoch. He made the earth reincarnate and recreated the old scenes of the past, hoping to give birth to those 2 people again. Isn't that why I was born in response to the calamity? I've digressed. What I mean is, the earth is repeating itself, and civilization is reincarnating. All the specialty delicacies naturally can't escape. They're all recreations of the past. Additionally, I feel that whatever I like to eat is also what Celestial Emperor Yi liked to eat in the past. Chu Feng was rambling over there, and he was quite narcissistic. The Dog Emperor looked at him and said, I really want to beat him to death. Fortunately, it was held down by 9 Dowie. Otherwise, the old dog would have rushed out and attacked. Here, this is Celestial Emperor's favorite food. Chu Feng introduced the dishes. There were braised, steamed, boiled, barbecued, and all kinds of them. What kind of dish is this? What kind of oil is this? It's not the golden chicken oil refined from the golden crow, nor is it the tiger bone oil refined from the exotic desolate tiger, nor is it the immortal grapeseed oil refined from the immortal vine. The taste is too ordinary. Does Celestial Emperor like to eat this? A Celestial King asked. Old man, you should be content. Back then, before Celestial Emperor achieved Tao, when he was still immortal, what he ate was much worse than what you're eating now. In any case, this is all natural and pollution-free organic food. Do you know what Celestial Emperor ate back then? It was all gutter oil. Of course, he didn't know it himself. He only found out many years later. If you don't believe me, you can ask the Dog Emperor. The Dog Emperor's eyes were unkind as he stared at him. This was simply the contempt of death. When the others saw that the Dog Emperor didn't say anything, they immediately knew that it was acquiescence. However, there were also people who were curious. They didn't know what gutter oil was and expressed that they wanted to try it. This is a bit difficult, but that's fine. When everyone finishes eating, I'll help you refine and extract the leftovers. That'll produce gutter oil. Get lost, you little devil. Zhou Daoi looked at Chu Feng and said, since you can find Celestial Emperor Ye's recipe, then find me the delicacies that he likes. That's easy. Just you wait. Chu Feng turned and disappeared. After a while, he returned, carrying a large, exquisite container, a huge silver pot. He handed it to Zhou Daoi and said, Celestial Emperor's favorite delicacies. Zhou Daoi was suspicious, but he wasn't afraid of the ingredients. He was a Dao ancestor. Even if he ate a truckload of the strongest poison, he would still be fine. However, when he put his mouth to the mouth of the pot and swallowed a mouthful, he spat it out again. The white liquid splashed all over the ground. The old man's face was gloomy. Then, he was a bit flustered and exasperated. He said, this old man is so old, and I've lived for several years. How dare you feed this old man milk? Vulgar. Chu Feng was calm. Seeing that Zhou Daoi was about to go berserk, he quickly put on a smile and said, time has changed. This is a healthy drink. Moreover, I've already asked the 3 old men. That one likes to drink this the most. Chu Feng pointed at the 3 old soldiers beside Zhou Daoi, indicating that they were the ones who told him that that one liked to drink animal milk the most. That one had this kind of hobby. Many celestial kings pricked up their ears and listened carefully, afraid that they would miss it. In fact, some celestial kings secretly decided that it was necessary to imitate this method to nurture future generations. They would feed them from infancy until they were 80 years old. Chu Feng quickly added, "Let me tell you, I asked someone from the Hollow Jade Temple to rush to a folded space on Earth. They found a fierce beast and squeezed out the freshest animal milk for you. Look, it's still steaming. Damn you." Zhou Daoi really wanted to curse him like this, but he really couldn't advance or retreat. That was because some things were indeed true. Even when that one was young, he still loved this kind of wild game the most. Drink it while it's hot. Let me tell you, this planet was formed by that one's great magical ability by combining the representative fragments of the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The animal milk you're drinking now might be the direct descendants of that batch of fierce beasts that one loved. So, don't worry, the source of the milk hasn't changed, and the taste is still the same. Shut up. Zhou Daoi couldn't stand him anymore. Of course, you also have to thank the half-darkness creature. After all, it's him who reincarnated on Earth and reproduced all the species from back then. Chu Feng dawdled. If you dare say another word, this old man will immediately slap you to death. Zhou Daoi was so angry that his beard curled up. Chu Feng was very unwilling. He opened his mouth, but in the end, he didn't dare to spit out a word. He only used his hand to carve some words in the void. Are you still that one's follower? If you are, then you should gulp down this steaming hot pot of beast milk. The kings watched the show and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Zhou Daoi flung his sleeve and made Chu Feng disappear. He directly flew tens of thousands of miles into space. Chu Feng arrived in space and didn't stop. He directly ran to the old site of Dameng Old Territory. Now, this place was very desolate because it had been razed to the ground by the supreme, martial Heavenly Lord's disciples. Zhou Daoi arrived soon after. Although the two of them had been tossing and turning just now, it was also a good opportunity to get rid of everyone. The vegetation on this planet was sparse. Back then, it had been bathed in blood, and the star source had been pierced through. It had become a barren land. However, the entrance to the foreign realm from Dameng Pure Land was still there. It was hidden in some ruins. Yes, this entrance is strange. There really is a mysterious power entrenched inside. It's not simple. Why don't we throw Gu Qing in first? Zhou Daoi and Chu Feng's discussion made people feel that it was very unreliable. Chu Feng said, No. He's secretly depressed. He's collapsing from time to time. If you do this, won't you be sending him to his death ahead of time? If that's the case, this era will end too quickly. Don't tell me you're really prepared to wait for me to ascend the throne. End of this chapter. Chapter 16:27. That's true. His mentality collapses easily. Even though he's an imperial prince, he's been beaten black and blue by reality. His mind is riddled with holes, and he can't take any more torment, Nine Dao said with a nod. Chu Feng didn't want to give him a good look. Since he knew the new emperor was in such a miserable state, why did he want to throw the new emperor into this unknown pit? I didn't think too much about it. I'm immune to all poisons, and I've become numb to the passing of time. I'm the only one left in this world. To survive and become stronger, I don't hesitate to peel off my skin, pull out my bones, and refine my soul. What's there to be afraid of? I've gotten used to it. You're having cramps and peeling off your skin. It sounds so creepy. Do you want me to pour you a cup of precious wine to nourish you? Get lost, you little devil. Nine Dao's face darkened, and he said with an unfriendly expression, Hurry up and change my face. Chu Feng didn't say anything. It was better not to anger this old man, or else he'd be the one to suffer. Nine Daos stared at the entrance. He held the sky burial diagram and was about to go in himself. Chu Feng was worried that if the old man died in there, he wouldn't be able to live in peace for the rest of his life. Let's call Gu Qing over. The two of you can go in together, he suggested. Didn't you say he breaks down easily? Nine Daos chuckled. He'll get used to it, Chu Feng said. He then explained, Don't you want the two of you to take care of each other? Finally, Gu Qing came. After careful observation, his expression changed again and again, but he still took responsibility and decided to go in with the old man. The desolate Dameng Pure Land used to be one of the most prosperous orthodoxies in the Little Een realm, but had fallen to such a state and became a barren land. It made people sigh. Chu Feng couldn't help but think of Qin Luoyin, the little Taoist, and all the things of the past. Okay, let's get ready to go. Kid, you're quite capable to order us around at the same time. However, if you manage to kill 2 Tao ancestors in one go, it would be enough for you to talk about it for the rest of your life. 9 Daoi said before leaving. This old man usually didn't look very dignified, and he didn't look like a Tao ancestor at all. However, if they were to wait for him to show his prowess, then something big must have happened. The two of them disappeared, entering an ominous foreign land. Please don't let anything happen to you. If we all die in there, how am I going to explain it to your descendants? Chu Feng muttered to himself. In reality, he could not explain himself. There were naturally celestial kings among the disciples of those two people. When the time came, he would probably fail even if he tried to escape. Up you! Moments later, 9 Daoi's head popped out of the dark, glowing cave and spat out a mouthful of gray substance. So fast. Chu Feng was surprised. Still fast? It's been so many days. 9 Daoi glared at him in dissatisfaction. His hair was a mess, and his battle clothes were tattered and stained with blood. He cut a sorry figure. Obviously, he had just fought fiercely with someone. Where's Gu Qing? Don't tell me the new emperor has collapsed? Chu Feng asked because Gu Qing hadn't appeared. Moreover, even 9 Daoi was in such a state, so he couldn't help but think. Pooh! Coincidentally, Gu Qing's head popped out of the cave and spat out a few mouthfuls of gray substance. He just happened to hear his words. Chu Feng was speechless. Gu Qing's face darkened. He looked at him again and again. Why did he find this brat more and more displeasing to the eye? Did he really want him to collapse? Then the two of them took a deep breath at the cave entrance, turned around, and went back in. There really is a big problem. Is there a terrifying monster entrenched in there? Chu Feng was suspicious. In the past, he was relatively weak, so he didn't attract that thing to attack. Bang! Suddenly, something was flung out of the cave. Without a word, Chu Feng kicked it with his foot, ready to defend himself. There was a mournful scream, like the wail of a malicious spirit. It was extremely terrifying. It's you? Chu Feng was surprised. This was a hunchback. His appearance was miserable and indescribably frightening. He gave off the feeling of a 10,000-year-old corpse seeing the light of day again. Chu Feng recognized him at a glance. This was the old fellow who sent out talismans in the foreign realm's 9-layered forbidden region. Moreover, he had threatened him more than once. Although he didn't attack him at that time, he had faintly threatened him several times. Old bastard, even you have a day like this. You've fallen into my hands. Chu Feng was very reckless. He picked him up and beat him, not caring about his identity. There was nothing much to say. He would beat him half to death first to vent his anger. Bang! Dang! Dong! The hunchbacked old ghost roared, hissing and releasing waves of Yin energy. He looked at Chu Feng viciously. He had really been beaten badly. All the bones and muscles in his body were broken. It really is the gray substance. You shameless old ghost, you even dare to threaten me and scare me with such a creepy smile. Today, Grandpa Chu will let you understand why flowers are so beautiful and why your little face is so bright. Chu Feng beat him up randomly. The hunchbacked old ghost's face was beaten until it blossomed. Blood splashed everywhere from his shriveled face. Back then, Chu Feng already saw that the old hunchbacked ghost was condensed from gray substance. He was extremely terrifying. Now, his strength increased greatly, so he could naturally see through the old ghost's background a step further. He was an Empyrean-level creature, hiding in the foreign realm as a servant. You haven't made any progress after all these years. Your cultivation is still like this? Chu Feng asked. The old ghost's eyes were vicious. He really should have strangled this little demon back then. He didn't expect the other party to grow to this extent enough to kill him. Speak, what exactly is going on with this stupid foreign realm? Who are you serving as a servant in that forbidden region? What exactly is inside? Also, were the talismans created by you guys? Definitely not. It's most likely a dove taking over a magpie's nest. Chu Feng continuously asked questions. In the end, the old ghost didn't say anything. His eyes were vicious, staring rigidly at him just like that. Huh! In the end, Chu Feng scattered him with a slap, turning him into gray matter. As for that soul light that wanted to escape, it was directly refined into ashes. There was movement at the entrance of the cave again. Some tattered scriptures were thrown out. Chu Feng carefully flipped through and studied them. They were all written in the foreign realm's language. He had lived in that world for a long time, so he had long become proficient in it. The foreign realm used to be very powerful and gave birth to a very splendid civilization, but it was still destroyed. Chu Feng sighed. These tattered scriptures recorded some special methods. They were very distinctive evolutionary paths that were worth learning from. No wonder it was destroyed. This involved some methods that used strange energy. On the whole, these scriptures had reference value. The essence of them was quite brilliant, but it was impossible for Chu Feng to copy them all. Nine Dowie and Gu Qing appeared again. The scriptures and the hunchbacked man were thrown out by them. Now, their hair was disheveled, and they were in an even more sorry state. It's finally done. I never expected there to be a living corpse inside, one that could be considered a super big one. There was a monster inside. Back then, it should have been dragged to death by the foreign realm's Tao ancestors. However, the gray matter was too special, incredibly strange. After endless time passed, as long as that type of matter was still there, it could condense again. That was why that inauspicious monster could obtain a new life. Now, it was forced to transform ahead of time by Nine Dowie and Gu Qing. It wasn't complete at all, and then it was completely eliminated by the two of them. This damn thing was definitely an exceptional Tao ancestor back then. If it continued down this path, it might have comprehended its own path and established a new system. It might even reach the end of the road level. Gu Qing said with a serious expression. Nine Dowie shook his head and said, "From the ancient times until now, there have been a few Tao ancestors. However, how many creatures at the end of the road level are there? It is too difficult to produce one. Even if it was a top-level Tao ancestor, only a hair away from reaching the end of the road level, the difference was still the difference. They were trapped at the lower levels, unable to cross the heavenly moat. There were some exceptional Tao ancestors. Even if they cultivated for many great eras, it would still be difficult for them to advance an inch, unable to take that crucial step. This also meant that they would never be able to break through the ceiling. The big one inside, your respected self, are you sure you killed it completely erased? Chu Feng's eyes shone, asking the two great experts. It's completely dead. Back then, the foreign realm's top-level Tao ancestors had dragged it down with them. However, this type of thing is a bit special, able to revive after endless time as long as a bit of its source is left behind. This time, it was still refined into dregs by us, burned to ashes. Chu Feng's eyes immediately shone. Now, the foreign realm was a world without any threats. The flow of time here was different from the outside world. If it was used well, it would become a precious land that evolved beings yearned for even in their dreams. You're thinking too much. This place has been greatly polluted, not many people from the younger generation able to endure it. As for immortal kings and others, even though they can endure it, the help this world can provide them is limited. That is because back then, the two top-level Tao ancestors fought, causing this world to collapse. The current world is only a part that is slowly recovering. For immortal kings, the great Tao is incomplete. Even for the younger generation, after cultivating and comprehending here, it's best to go to other complete great cosmoses or even more dangerous primal chaos worlds to temper themselves. The two Tao ancestors' pointers allowed Chu Feng to understand the situation here. That's not a problem. Chu Feng really didn't care much about the so-called gray pollution, as well as the problem of the great Tao being incomplete. He needed this place only to cool down his body. The biggest drawback of the Road of Pollen was that after he evolved to a certain level, the foundation and potential of both his body and soul would be squeezed out. He would be in an extremely unfavorable period of fatigue and it would take a long time for him to recover. Now that Chu Feng was King Chu, with his personality, he would naturally ask the new emperor for great U-level foreign soil and other things. In the future, there would be no lack of strategic resources. At the same time, he also had rare pollen, with 3 astonishing seeds hidden in his body. Even though he had broken the so-called pollen path ceiling, that didn't mean he would abandon this path. This was still his main path, and he would advance with his head held high. However, he would evolve more comprehensively, raising the pollen path's transformation to a level that surpassed its limits. He could use the seeds to evolve in the outside world, and then come to this foreign realm to cool down his body. Everything was perfect for the time being. Your juniors, disciples, and grand disciples can cultivate with me in the other side. I will help them resist and erase the gray matter. Think about it. One day here might not be equivalent to 100 years in the outside world, but it should be equivalent to several years or even decades, right? This is truly an astonishing treasure. No wonder the Yuan race wants to conquer this world. It is worthy of being a treasure of time. Chu Feng described the benefits of this secret realm to the 2 old men so that they could protect him and not let in any hostile races, such as the 4 tribulation sparrows, martial emperors, and the Yuan race. Gu Qing was moved. His eldest disciple naturally didn't need it, since this place was of little value to an immortal king. However, he had descendants, disciples, and grand-disciples. Those youngsters really needed this supreme treasure of a moment. Zhu Dao Yi said, the Yuan race has probably given up on this place. I saw their handiwork. Some of their people came here to cultivate, but in the end, their bodies were polluted. They left behind while saying that they didn't want this strange world anymore. That's great. It saves me from feeling numb. Chu Feng nodded. He suddenly looked up and said, someone's coming. As for the 2 Dao ancestors, they had naturally sensed the situation long ago. They didn't care much since the Dark Hand had left the netherworld and there were no creatures that could threaten them. The newcomer had arrived on this star through a domain. He flew for a while before noticing Chu Feng's group. You're Chu Feng. You're Uncle Ming. Chu Feng and the newcomer were startled. Then they burst into laughter. They had actually reunited here. Uncle Ming was an ancient saint on Earth. Yao Yao called him Uncle Ming, and so did Chu Feng. Back then, Uncle Ming had fought to protect the Earth and fought to the death against the deity race and the Shilin clan. He had suffered great suffering and torture. But later on, he managed to break free and waited until Yao Yao and Chu Feng's group rose to power. Although it seemed that these were disputes between low-level evolvers, the gratitude and grudges involved were just as touching as human nature. It made people feel resentful and anxious. Uncle Ming, come with me. Yao Yao is in the Yang realm now and is about to become an immortal. The Sage Master I Chen is also here and has become a heavenly master of the field. Come with me to the Yang realm. Chu Feng pulled him back. This old man had always been protecting Yao Yao and cherishing this junior. What? Yao Yao is still alive? Uncle Ming was immediately excited. He stretched out his trembling hands and grabbed Chu Feng's shoulders. He choked with sobs, and tears welled up in his old eyes. The heavens have pity on me. I didn't take good care of Yao Yao back then. She's actually still alive. The heavens have finally opened their eyes. Uncle Ming cried. His hair was white and his eyes were turbid. He couldn't control his emotions. Back then, almost everyone in his generation had died in battle. Even the younger generation couldn't escape the evil hands. Yao Yao was only a remnant soul. Her physical body had fallen into the abyss in ancient times and was extremely miserable. Later on, Yao Yao reappeared in the world. Uncle Ming broke free and immediately found her. But the tragedy played out again. In the end, Yao Yao and Tai Wu fought a decisive battle and fell into the abyss again. Uncle Ming actually cried and couldn't stop. He couldn't calm his emotions for a long time. She's alive and in a very good condition. She's cultivated in several evolutionary systems. Back then, she entered the great Yin realm from the abyss. Chu Feng quickly explained the situation to calm him down. Good. Let's go. Take me to see Yao Yao and the Sage Master. Uncle Ming's lips were trembling and tears streamed down his old face. After the matter in the Little Een realm was settled, Chu Feng and the various kings embarked on their return journey. When they returned, there were two more people. It was Shi Hu and Uncle Ming. I say, seniors, people of such high statuses like you actually eat and ask for all kinds of local specialties. You even blackmail low-level cultivators? In the starry sky, Chu Feng looked at the various kings. Because he already understood the situation, these people had a lot of bottles and jars. There were recipes for the Celestial Emperor's banquet and limestone that the Celestial Emperor had sat on back then. There were even people who wanted to cut down the peak of Mount Ai and take it away. But in the end, no one dared to act rashly for fear of provoking great karma. Chu Feng said, "The most excessive thing is that you're looking for female beasts everywhere to milk them. You're provoking tigers and wolves. Those who don't know might think spring has arrived and all living things have recovered." An old monster said, "Aren't you preparing to let the descendants of my race have a taste of the beast milk that person drank? After all, what you said makes sense. Because the earth is reincarnating, the taste of the beast descendants shouldn't have changed. It should still be the original milk source. So, you're milking beast milk all over the world? The earth is actually barren of resources. If that person is unhappy after sensing that you're acting so wantonly, you should leave some opportunities for the earth. It can be considered an equivalent exchange. If it were the middle-aged generation, they would naturally scoff at Chu Feng's nonsense. They wouldn't care much and wouldn't take it seriously. However, the expressions of the older generation changed. At their level, they understood reverence more and more, and they were even more afraid of bearing karma. In an instant, the hands of some old monsters shone. They really shot out beams of divine light that flew toward the blue star behind them. In the summer province of the Yang realm, the central celestial emperor palace floated in midair. It was grand and dignified. Divine light circulated and purple chi filled the air. The kings returned, and everything returned to normal. After Chu Feng returned, he directly asked the new Emperor Gu Qing for evolutionary resources. It wasn't just for himself, but also for Yellow Cattle, East Tiger, and the others. Now, he held the title of King Chu and had made many contributions. The main reason was that he had won a lot of face for the lower realm in the showdown between the younger generations of high heavens. Moreover, he had indeed displayed astonishing and terrifying potential. Whether for public or private reasons, Gu Qing wouldn't suppress him and should give him the evolutionary resources he needed. As expected, Gu Qing waved his brush and told him to go to the treasury to collect it himself without any hesitation. "Wait a minute, kid. Are you preparing to evolve and run to the foreign realm?" Nine Daoi called out to him. "Yes." Chu Feng nodded. In such an environment, he had no other choice. Naturally, he needed to quickly increase his own strength. "There's no hurry. I think we should first find a few Dao companions for you and help you get married. It's best if you have a marriage alliance with the major races," Nine Daoi said. Huh? Chu Feng was shocked. What was going on? What was this old man thinking? Did you know that once you reach the Celestial Lord realm, it's very difficult to have descendants? You need the help of all kinds of divine medicine. You're now in the mixed prime realm, which is also what ordinary people call almighty. If you want to have descendants, it'll be even more worrisome. Nine Daoi reminded him solemnly. Chu Feng was truly shocked. "I'll issue a decree to choose a Dao companion for you and personally host your wedding." Gu Qing also spoke. It could be said that he valued Chu Feng quite a bit. Otherwise, beings at the level of him and Nine Daoi wouldn't be able to meet with perfected immortals or even celestial kings, let alone mixed prime realm cultivators. Is this really necessary? Chu Feng looked at Nine Daoi. Of course, unless you want to be the last. From now on, you'll devote yourself to cultivation and never think about having children. Nine Daoi nodded. "I have a son," Chu Feng whispered. "Do you think that son of yours is reliable? He'll become one with someone at any time and become an old monster. When that time comes, will you call him son, or will he want you to call him patriarch?" Gu Qing joked. Chu Feng felt a chill run down his spine when he thought of the corpse. Then, I won't let Tathagata down, I won't let you down. I won't let down my woman and my cultivation. Chu Feng nodded solemnly. Chapter 1628. It was obvious that Chu Feng was at a loss when it came to important matters in life. He naturally thought of Qin Luoying. Due to all sorts of accidents, the two of them had a child. But now that the little Taoist could fly, the two of them had lost contact. He could understand if he were in her shoes. After all, Fairy Qingshi from the prehistoric era had revived, and her main memories were all about the past. Who could let go of the past? Now that he had mixed Qin Luoying's experiences, it only occupied 10% of her original memories. It was too little to change the nature of her soul and thoughts. She was Qingyi now, and she only lived for herself. The relationship between them was complicated and messy. Chu Feng couldn't and didn't have a right to blame her. Why are you frowning? Are you hesitating about what kind of Tao companion you should choose? Don't worry, we'll help you choose. Jidaoi took charge of everything. Gu Qing directly spread the word that since the celestial heavens had just been established, there needed to be more happy events. He was willing to host marriages for the young people of the various races to dilute the chaotic atmosphere. I think Ouyang Dalong isn't bad, Jidaoi said. Chu Feng, at #yin%. What was this damned old man trying to do? Was he making fun of him? He really wanted to beat him to death. Why'd he mention Ouyang? What are you thinking? Jidaoi glared at him and said, I'm saying Ouyang Feng's background isn't small. I've calculated it, and he might really be related to the silkworm sovereign at the end of the Soul River. The Tao ancestor's deduction was naturally reliable. He believed that Ouyang Feng might be the reincarnation of a small silkworm, so he wanted to find a marriage for him. He wanted to instigate the silkworm sovereign at the crucial moment. Chu Feng really wanted to say that this old man was doing this on purpose. He wanted to scare him by mentioning Ouyang Feng. Huh, Jidaoi laughed and said, how about that black pearl from the barbaric ox race? Although her body is a bit sturdy, it's good for the future generations. She can give birth to experts with extraordinary constitutions. Moreover, she's a fairly stunning beauty in her race. What do you think? Chu Feng was expressionless. Thank you, everyone, your family. Leave her to your great-great-grandson, provided that you have one. Of course, I have to make it clear that I'm not discriminating against her. It's just that we don't know each other and have no feelings for each other. We can't be together. The Dog Emperor immediately ran to the Celestial Emperor Palace. It did not have the slightest bit of respect for the new emperor. No matter what, Gu Qing was still its nephew. It said carelessly, what do you think about the princess of the Yuan tribe? There's no such thing as a mortal enemy in this world. Peace is the most important thing. Fellow Taoist, please hold your tongue. Stop it. Chu Feng refused sternly. The Dog Emperor said, I think it's a pretty good idea. Even if the grudge can't be resolved, taking the enemy's princess as a concubine is also a beautiful story for the victor. Chu Feng rolled his eyes. This dog was really not a good dog. It was definitely not a good dog. He knew that the Dog Emperor had always wanted to kill the people of the Yuan tribe because he wanted to avenge Yao Yao and Elder Yushang. 9 Taoists revealed a smile and said, how about I go discuss with the strange creature and find you a long-legged beauty from the gray race? Even if the darkest hour comes and the inauspicious forces kill us all, you'll still have a chance to live when the earth is covered in ice and the universe is enveloped in darkness. Chu Feng looked again and again, but he still didn't dare to make a move against this old thing. The rotten corpse also came and said, you brat, you don't want this and that. Who do you want? Don't tell me you have a heavy taste. Fine, I'll help you choose. I'll go to the Great Een realm and see if there are any remnants of the burial grounds. If there are, I'll help you dig out an ancient corpse from millions and millions of years ago. Don't worry, it's definitely sentient. It's definitely alive and warm. Chu Feng felt disgusted and didn't want to say anything. These old bastards were clearly mocking him. He was unbearably angry and couldn't bear it anymore. He looked at the rotten corpse and said, I'll go reason with my son. I'll let him reason with you. The rotten corpse directly rolled up his sleeves. The outside world was already in a heated discussion. Demon Chu was about to get married. This wasn't a small matter. No matter what, he was still a famous freak. At the very least, he was very good at stirring up trouble. Wherever he was, there wouldn't be peace. At the same time, his amazing potential was obvious to all. Everyone wanted to rope him in. Monkey, your sister Tian is a peerless beauty. She's much cuter and prettier than a furry monkey like you. Don't you want to be Chu Feng's brother-in-law? Old Gu asked Tian. Old Ghost, how am I not prettier? I'm the famous Monkey King. Tian was furious and wanted to challenge Old Gu to a duel. On the other side, the immortal king of the wild ox race pulled the black yak's ear and said, Calf, you and Chu Feng are sworn brothers. Go, introduce my race's black pearl to him, and let them become Tao companions. Mu, ancestor, are you looking down on me? I'm destined to be a Tao ancestor in the future. Isn't it better for my race's #1 beauty to marry me? The black yak said while patting his chest. Tao ancestor? Your ancestor, don't even dare to think about it. Our race has never given birth to such a creature. In the Zhou clan, many people teased Zhou Shi. They said that she was finally going to achieve enlightenment, and that it wasn't in vain to refuse the well-intentioned recommendations of the clan's outstanding talents. Zhou Shi's face turned crimson. At the same time, she said in a low voice, but I heard that the 2 Tao ancestors and the various immortal kings are helping him choose a Tao companion. She was usually lively, quick-witted, and eccentric, but this time, when it came to her marriage, she felt a little uneasy. She was no longer crafty, but shy and nervous. Don't worry, the key is still up to Chu Feng. If he's heartless, we'll capture him and suppress him in the underground demon cave for 100,000 years. Some of the old women in the clan were laughing and talking. They were very relieved. Within the Celestial Emperor Palace, 9 Daoi's smile vanished. He no longer teased Chu Feng and said, I'll tell you a piece of news. I just used a secret technique to contact Yao Yao and Yushang, who are hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Yushang is very satisfied with you and is very happy to have such a great great-grandson-in-law. However, Yao Yao herself denied it. In this life, she only cares about evolution and cultivation. She isn't willing to be deeply involved in worldly affairs. She views you as her younger brother and is willing to accompany you on your path of evolution. After Zhou Daoi finished speaking, he more or less understood Yao Yao's attitude. Chu Feng nodded. He had always regarded this heaven-gifted woman as a confidant and a fellow traveler on the path of evolution. In the future, they could support each other and advance to the supreme realm hand in hand. To him and Yao Yao, it was better to be a bit simpler. In the future, they would travel together and explore the path of cultivation. This kind of confidant wasn't a Tao companion, but their relationship was still close. Regarding Qin Luoyin, I transmitted my voice just now, and she also gave me a reply. Zhou Daoi looked at Chu Feng. Chu Feng said, You don't need to look at me. To be honest, I'm indeed conflicted. After all, she's the little Taoist mother, but I also understand her. When he heard this, the others didn't react. The corpse immediately turned around and disappeared. He didn't want to hear these things that made him irritable. She said she only knew who she was after she recovered her memories. She once carried a heavy burden and no longer had any love affairs. She only wanted the ancient dream path and damning Pure Land to reappear in the world and restore it to its most flourishing and brilliant era. At the same time, she was also frank. What she said to you at that time about her heart belonging to someone in the prehistoric era was actually all a lie. She only wanted to sever ties with you and make you give up earlier. She purposely cast sidelong glances at that person and whispered about his glorious achievements. In reality, she didn't have any interaction with that so-called legend of legends. She only admired his combat strength. Regarding these matters, she was willing to make things clear before you got married. In this life, she didn't want to involve herself in love affairs. As for that child, the little Taoist, she naturally viewed him as her own and took care of him in secret. Chu Feng nodded silently. Then he sighed. In the end, Qin Luoyin was only a part of Qing Shi. Now, Qing Shi was a fusion of the two and had completely realized all the things of the past. In the distance, the rotten corpse was about to explode again. His biological father didn't count, but his biological mother was also coming to find him. Wrong. Find a little Taoist. Senior, don't be a matchmaker. I'll make the decision myself. Chu Feng spoke. Otherwise, he didn't know what these old fogies were going to do. Adding to the chaos made his heart heavy. Who are you going to choose? Don't tell me you've taken a fancy to that Luo Tianxian from the high heavens? But the door to the high heavens is closed. It's going to be difficult, Gu Qing said with a smile. Apparently, these old fogies were making fun of him. Zhou Shi. Chu Feng didn't waste words and directly pointed it out. Yes, I'm thinking it's also this girl. Nine Daos nodded. Since you already knew, why did you change the topic and say a bunch of nonsense? You even dragged the bizarre creatures into this, not to mention the Black Pearl and the others. You rotten old fogies. Brat, I'll propose marriage for you. The Dao ancestor had a lot of face. In addition, the new Emperor Gu Qing was willing to preside over the wedding. This was truly a matter that shook the world. Not long after, the Dao ancestor arrived at the Zhou clan and gave them enough face. Even the Zhou clan's immortal king in the Outer Realm ancestral land personally came to the Yang realm to receive them. Not to mention that Zhou, she could make her own decisions. How could the Zhou clan stop this marriage with the Dao ancestor's presence? They gave a warm and affirmative response. The world was restless, and there were heated discussions everywhere. I'm not happy. In the quasi-immortal clan, Ying Xiaoxiao was truly unhappy. Her eyes were red, and she was very sad. Her sister Ying Zhixin stroked her head and sighed softly. What? You want to find a dragon to be my wife, or a silkworm to be my Dao companion? Ouyang Dalong was furious and wanted to rebel on the spot. He was still young and didn't have enough freedom. Who wanted to care about him? When he found out that it was the Dao ancestor's suggestion, he immediately became listless. But in the end, he mustered up his courage to resist and wouldn't get married no matter what. Chu Feng personally went to the Zhou clan and delivered valuable betrothal gifts. They were all moved out from the storehouse by the new Emperor Gu Qing. They were absolutely dazzling. Scriptures, mother gold, precious treasures, there was everything one could wish for. The Zhou clan didn't have any obstructions. The more they looked at Chu Feng, the more they liked him. Most importantly, they knew that Zhou Shi liked him, and that was enough. However, someone was nitpicking. It was Joey who looked at Chu Feng and said, "You look so young. You look like you're 13 or 14 years old. You're too young. That won't do. How improper." Chu Feng was speechless. Was it a sin to be young? Don't pretend to be young. You've walked the reincarnation path, right? That's why you look so young. Hurry up and mature. Make yourself more normal. This was Joey's request. This time, the Zhou clan nodded in unison. They also felt that Chu Feng's face was too young. It was a bit unreasonable. After all, even though Lady Shi was as tender and beautiful as a flower bud, she still looked a few years older than Chu Feng. Chu Feng was too young and inexperienced. Go to the foreign land and speed up your maturation. Of course, you have to be careful. Don't waste too much time. Don't let yourself mature into a crooked cucumber. How can an old man in his 70s or 80s be a match for Shi? The Dog Emperor said. This damn dog didn't know how to talk. Chu Feng really wanted to fight it, but in the end, he restrained himself. He couldn't let it bite him and then bite the dog, right? Chu Feng left and went to the Celestial Island. He brought Jiang Luotian and Xia Qinyu with him to personally send them back to Earth. You're getting married to the Zhou clan's little princess? Xia Qinyu was surprised. Although she was far away, she still heard about the outside world from time to time. About Demon Chu and the Zhou clan. They were all famous in the Yang realm. Yes, you should find someone to marry as soon as possible. You're not young anymore. Don't make your mother worry, Chu Feng said. Back then, the two of them had been on a blind date. Moreover, their families had helped them contact each other. Who wants to get married? How am I not young anymore? I'm still young. I can still stay young for who knows how many years. Xia Qinyu's mood was complicated. So many years had passed, Yet this famous demon king before her actually had that kind of interaction with her back then. Jiang Luotian also had a strange expression. She sighed with emotion. Everything seemed like a dream. Finally, they embarked on their return journey. Chu Feng personally sent them back to Earth, back to their homeland. Then, without stopping, he entered the foreign land with his physical body and rapidly accelerated his maturation. He returned to his 20s appearance and hurried back to the Yang realm. There were no accidents along the way. Demon Chu announced his wedding to the world. In reality, this wasn't just his wedding. There were many other newlyweds. That was because the heavenly court wouldn't be able to justify mobilizing so many people just for his wedding. No matter how festive it was, it shouldn't be like this. But holding a wedding for all the young people of the right age and those who were engaged to each other was justifiable. On this day, the Celestial Emperor issued a decree. All the mountains and rivers in the Summer Province were in full bloom at the same time. It was incomparably brilliant, and the fragrance of the flowers filled the air. The towering mountains, the magnificent rivers, the blue lakes, all the mountains and rivers were lively. They were overflowing with light and vibrant colors, and auspicious clouds were rising. The Tao ancestor used a great divine ability, and there were natural phenomena accompanying it. The mountains and rivers shone together. Among the heavenly court, on the various floating islands, magnificent buildings were decorated with lanterns and streamers. Some immortal kings were smiling. After all, some of their descendants were the newlyweds today, and they were going to get married together. In the sky, streams of light broke through the air. There were sword immortals who came riding flying swords, clan leaders who came riding war chariots, and even people from other great realms and giants of the heavens. The guests were like clouds, and there were many powerhouses. It was like a convention of thousands of races. True immortals, rotten creatures of a universe, and so on appeared one after another. There were many palaces in the heavenly court, and it was enough to hold a wedding for many newlyweds. Immortal mist lingered in the air, and there were countless evolvers among the pavilions and jade palaces. There were colorful phoenixes dancing in the sky, auspicious birds singing, and auspicious beasts guarding. Guests from all walks of life presented their gifts. The gifts for the newlyweds, Chu Feng and Zhou Shi, were especially valuable, and there were countless rare treasures. The six-eared macaque race presents a battle scripture, someone shouted. This immediately caused an uproar. This seemed to be a scripture created by their race's ancestor. It was quite broad and profound, and it was extremely extraordinary. Even though this scripture involved another type of evolved civilization, it was still a treasure for Chu Feng to study. He could verify many of its mysteries. Immortal King Dawn Nightmare presents 6 portions of universe-level mutant soil. This caused a huge uproar. Li Blackhand was really generous, directly presenting such a valuable gift. Existences at the pinnacle of primordial chaos who wanted to become universe-level experts desired this kind of mutant soil the most. They could use it to nurture their immortal plants so that they could harvest pollen as soon as possible. Universe-level mutant soil was too difficult to find. Even immortal king clans couldn't find this kind of soil easily. Now, Li Su was presenting 6 portions in one go. It was indeed generous. Yao Yao presents a nameless scripture. This didn't cause a commotion, but the dog Emperor's expression changed greatly after seeing it. This seemed to be related to the Empress' inheritance. Chu Feng flipped through it and was immediately shaken. The scripture's profundities were extraordinary, and it attracted his attention. But now wasn't the time to study it in detail, so he put it away solemnly. Immortal King Ox presents a pair of full moon scimitars polished from the horns of a peak true immortal. The Buddhist race presents 2 9 reincarnation Buddha fruits, which can reconstruct the corporeal body and true soul. The Tao race, the gifts presented by the guests were very valuable, and they shocked everyone present. But there were also surprises. A beautiful fairy-like young girl with sparkling silver hair ran close to Chu Feng. Her eyes were red as she said softly, "Brother Chu, you said before that you would marry me when my hair reached my waist. I've been waiting for you all this time. But today, I've been waiting for such an outcome." At this point, Ing Xiao cried and said, "If it were my own sister, I wouldn't fight with her. But I'm still unconvinced by young lady Shi." It was obvious that she was truly heartbroken. Chu Feng was dumbfounded. Did he say these things? He had no impression at all. Chapter 16:29. Ing Xiao had really grown into a young lady. Her figure was very slender now, and she was only half a fish shorter than the tall Chu Feng. She was slender and elegant, and her silvery hair reached her waist and sparkled. However, her face was full of tears, and she looked dejected. She was incomparably sentimental under today's atmosphere. She held onto a corner of Chu Feng's sleeve with an indescribable reluctance. There was an indescribable pain and longing. Although many people looked over, she didn't let go because she knew that they would probably be separated from each other for the rest of their lives if she let go. Perhaps they would never meet again. Letting go like this also meant a complete separation of life's emotions. They were destined to look at each other from afar in this lifetime and be separated forever. They would never meet again for the rest of their lives. Tears silently rolled down her cheeks. She didn't say anything else and only looked at Chu Feng delicately and pitifully like an injured little beast. She was full of helplessness and sorrow. Chu Feng's heart suddenly became heavy. He lifted an arm and used his sleeve to wipe the tears off her face. He didn't know how to comfort her. That was because although a person's emotions were abundant in this lifetime, some couldn't be separated. If he made a promise now, what kind of situation would that put Zhou Xi in? Especially on a day like today, she would be seriously hurt. More and more people noticed the abnormality here. Many evolvers in the vicinity looked over because it was clearly inappropriate. This would cause an accident to happen at the wedding. Ing Zhixian walked over and gently hugged her little sister's slightly trembling shoulder. She consoled her softly and wanted to pull her away. Ing Xiao's face was exquisite and flawless, but her eyes were red and her long eyelashes were stained with tears. She was very sentimental and didn't want to let go, but her fingers still silently let go in the end. "I don't want to mess things up here, and I won't ruin your wedding with Sister Shi. I really can't bear to part with you. My heart hurts." Her face was pale, and she was extremely helpless as she spoke with a choked voice. After that, she shed even more tears, but she still turned around resolutely in the end. She turned her back to the past and wanted to leave with her older sister. She didn't want to make things difficult for Chu Feng. She didn't want to bring an accident to this wedding that attracted the attention of the world. Just now, she really couldn't help but reveal her true feelings. She knew that turning around like this meant that their fate in this life had come to an end. There would be no more future, no more longing for the past. Those feelings were destined to be hidden in the deepest part of her heart. In this life, she would walk down alone. Chu Feng wanted to say something to her, but when he opened his mouth, nothing came out. What did he promise? He didn't have the qualifications, and he couldn't do it. Today was his wedding with someone else. What confidence did he have? What qualifications did he have to make a heavy promise to the tearful girl in front of him who was slowly turning around? Ing Zhixian embraced her younger sister before glancing at Chu Feng, indicating that she would protect Xiao well. Chu Feng nodded silently. He hoped that she would take good care of Ing Xiao. Towards Ing Zhixian, he had long since lost the resentment and indignation he had back then. After thinking about it carefully and looking at it from a different perspective, Ing Zhixian had her reasons for calling out his identity back then. That was because the treasured mirror of the Yang realm was hanging there at that time. As long as he went over, his identity would definitely be exposed. Ing Zhixian knew that he would reveal a flaw. Since that was the case, she could only protect her family first and let those powers in the Yang realm believe that she wasn't colluding with Chu Feng from the inside. Chu Feng believed that the choice Ing Zhixian made in her heart at that time was incomparably painful, but she could only make one choice in the end. At this moment, Ing Wudi also walked over. He didn't have a dark face like he did in the past, nor did he have any complaints. He was expressionless as he supported his younger sister's other shoulder and wanted to take her away. All of a sudden, Chu Feng's mood became incomparably heavy. He felt as if there was a mountain pressing down on his heart. Even when he faced powerful enemies from all over the heavens in the past, he hadn't felt so oppressed before. He could feel that after Xiao Xiao left, he might never see that intelligent, quick-witted, and lively silver-haired girl again. He would never hear her voice calling him Big Brother Chu Feng again. After Xiao Xiao turned around, she didn't speak again. Her tears flowed unceasingly. After that, she finally took a step forward. She wanted to escape because she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to hold herself back from crying out loud. She would alarm everyone and cause this wedding to be criticized. She didn't want Chu Feng to be guided by others. She wanted to escape far away and never see him again in this lifetime. As a Dao ancestor, Nine Daoi was overseeing this place today. Naturally, he could see through the finest details and could sense everything. He saw Chu Feng's situation clearly and also saw Xiao Xiao's dejected expression. He even saw the expressions and inner emotions of everyone else present. He sighed softly and said, "How much time can we have when we're young? How many people will sigh and regret for the latter half of their lives?" However, in the long river of history and under the brilliant starry sky of the universe, what does an individual's honor, disgrace, sorrow, and joy count for? Which legendary figure doesn't have a past and doesn't have their own grudges and sorrows? Look forward more. Under the vast sky, amidst the rumbling sound of history books flipping, all of an individual's honor, disgrace, gain, and loss can be ignored. There was once an imperial prince who sacrificed himself for his father. There was also a Kongming fairy who bitterly waited for half her life under the bleak and cold moonlight. There was also a teacher who carried an undefeatable enemy and left with him to forever fall into darkness in order to protect his homeland. There is also an eternal emperor who generously let go of all the worldly affairs behind him and cut off his family and friends to go to the dark nest alone. No one will know after 1,000 years. He only left behind a faint trail of footprints that narrates the past bleakness and sorrow. His achievements throughout the ages are quiet and silent. Glorious merits will only shine for one generation. Resplendent military achievements will eventually dim. As the era changes, who can leave their name behind forever? Countless achievements will be buried in the earth and dust. Young man, raise your head, be a little more arrogant, and look forward in high spirits. Jiu Dao, he rambled on and on as he commented on his own. In the end, he sighed and said, "Forget it. Since I've seen it, how can I remain indifferent? How can I bear to do this? I'll help you sort out your messy entanglements. As a Dao ancestor, I control the laws of the present age. Today, I'll use public property for my own personal use and pull strings for all of you. I really can't bear to see all that bitterness and grief, but you'll have to depend on yourselves in the future. All kinds of karma will eventually come to an end." After Jiu Dao finished speaking, he began to perform a spell. Only those with the fiery eyes and supreme powerhouses could see hints of it. They saw red, veined patterns interweave in the void and spread toward Chu Feng. They then wound around Xiao Xiao and expanded into the distance. "Huh, you really have great karma on you. Even I feel slightly difficult to touch you." Jiu Dao, he was shocked. He looked at Chu Feng and was greatly shaken in his heart. The Dog Emperor sensed his emotions and also looked at Chu Feng. Its heart was stirred, and a peculiar expression appeared in its eyes. "I'll help you. Today, I'll be a matchmaker for the world of mortals." New Emperor Gu Qing also made his move. He was full of smiles and appeared very benevolent. Even Xiao Xiao, who was crying, didn't know why, but when she saw him, she felt a little more at ease and at peace. The two Dao ancestors made their move. Scarlet vein patterns wound around a few people. They used their great divine abilities to guide the threads of karma, and the red threads wound around everyone. Without a doubt, the two old men were twisting the heaven and earth. They interfered with some matters in the unseen world, and threads of red threads of karma appeared between heaven and earth. It's reasonable to say that interfering with a little evolver at the origin realm like you won't affect us in any way. But if something unexpected happens, it'll indirectly prove that you'll indeed be outstanding in the future. When the time comes, don't forget to return my great karma, said Jodao. Although he said this, he didn't take it seriously at all. He didn't believe that Shu Feng could do anything. There wasn't enough time for the younger generation to rise up. Even if he and Gu Qing died in battle, their bodies and souls dissipated, the heavens would return to darkness, and the world would sink into oblivion and be sealed in ice. And Shu Feng was lucky to be alive. What could he do? He wouldn't have the chance to return any karma to the two of them. Shu Feng knew that it wasn't easy for a Dao ancestor to interfere with the trifling matters of the younger generation. Beings at this level usually wouldn't look at the personal karma entanglement of the younger generation. Although he didn't know what had happened, he could feel their kindness and was very grateful to them. At this moment, Ying Xiaoxiao suddenly became quiet. She felt the haze and sadness in her heart dispel quite a bit. She was arranged to stay in a quiet palace, but she didn't resist and didn't leave just like that. Shu Feng looked at the distant sky. Today's wedding actually happened. Although it didn't cause a commotion, some people still saw it. He sighed softly. He looked back briefly and seemed to see some people's figures. Linoi, Qin Luoyin, Ying Xiaoxiao Yao Yao. They flashed through his memory. Some people came, and some people he hadn't seen for a long time. He didn't know if they would meet again in this lifetime. The wedding continued, and more guests came. There were many couples getting married, but there was no doubt that Shu Feng's side was the most dazzling. There were many immortal kings who came. As for the congratulatory gifts, they were piled up like a mountain. All of them were rare treasures and all kinds of unique items. There were even exceptional scriptures. The runes of the great Tao automatically appeared on the yellowed paper, and one could tell at a glance that they were world-shaking items. Even though the paper was a scripture, it was difficult to destroy and could exist in the world for a long time. The main reason was that the things recorded were too astonishing. Hey, why do some of these gifts look so familiar? Among them, the 6 pieces of universe-level mutant earth that Li Su had provided were the most eye-catching. These things weren't the most precious, but they were definitely strategic evolutionary resources. The main thing was that these materials were very difficult to gather. They were considered rare treasures even in immortal king clans and were extremely precious, let alone gathering all 6 of them in one go. One of the sources of darkness in the Yang realm, Tai Yi, had a dark expression. After a long time, he said, "One of the treasured lands belongs to my family." After hearing this, Nantuo's expression instantly changed, and he said in a low voice, "If you didn't say it, I would still be suspicious. But now, I'm sure that one of the Azure Universe-level deity lands belongs to my collection in the past." In an instant, the face of an old monster from the Western Paradise Organization also twitched, and his expression became unsightly. This was because one of the universe-level deity lands with a golden luster belonged to him. Black Childly, after the last revival, the so-called Great Battle with a wisp of obsession was just a pretense to tangle with us. He had another clone to steal and loot everywhere. It's simply so dark that smoke is coming out of his head. He's too immoral. Our Pure Lands have all been visited. Then, an old monster from a certain restricted area also said faintly, "One of them belongs to my family." Even the old lair of a peak true immortal level creature like him, known as a prehistoric forbidden land, had been dug up. Immediately, the group of victims gathered together, extremely resentful. What they had lost wasn't just the universe-level deity lands, but also other precious treasures. Last time, before the Soul River battle, Black Childly had always been secretly raiding properties. He had stolen many good things, but in the end, there was no evidence. The group could only suffer in silence. No wonder Black Childly is so generous. All of it was gathered from looting other people's properties. It's his father's. Shu, lower your voice. A teacher for a day is a father for life. His master is now a Tao ancestor. Are you looking for trouble? Besides, He's an immortal king himself. The group of people was depressed and angry, but they couldn't do anything. Black Childly was too hateful, but there was nothing they could do. After all, the Tao ancestor was the host of the wedding today. Who would dare to stir up trouble here? Today, there were too many guests. The Sage Master and Uncle Ming were also present. They were drinking and looking at Chu Feng from afar. They felt gratified, but also a bit regretful. In truth, they really wanted to attend his and Yao Yao's wedding wine. Unfortunately, that niece's aspirations weren't in the world of mortals. She was a heaven-bestowed genius and was only willing to devote her life to the path of evolution. Celestial Venerable Stone Fox had also come. Although his master, an expert from the Yuan race, was present, he didn't care. After severing all ties back then, would the Yuan race dare to cause trouble for him here? There was an enchanting and charming beauty beside him. It was his descendant, the 10-tailed celestial fox. I feel that the Tao ancestors' red line of karma will have a great impact on the future. Think about it. Do you want to join the past? Throw yourself into the karma. The fox race, especially the 9-tailed celestial fox, was naturally charming. Just the word humph was enough to move one's heart, let alone the 10-tailed celestial fox. Qin Luoyin had also arrived nearby. She was talking a soft voice to a fair-skinned young Taoist in a side hall. She revealed a motherly radiance and overflowed with love. "Congratulations," said the Dog Emperor as he nudged the corpse. The corpse was absent-minded and ignored him. After a long while, he asked, "What's the good news?" The young Taoist's father is the main character today. Let's not talk about it. Look, even his mother is here. The Dog Emperor chuckled. "What does it have to do with you? And what does it have to do with me? What's there to be happy about?" The corpse's expression was unfriendly. The group of old monsters around them looked like they were watching a good show. The Dog Emperor said casually, "How is it none of her business? Today, you're old and blessed with good fortune. Both your parents are alive. You're already so old, yet you still have such good fortune. It's really a pity from the heavens. How many people can't cultivate such good fortune in their lifetimes?" The group of old monsters nearby was dumbfounded. Then, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. The corpse's mentality collapsed on the spot. His face was as black as the bottom of a wok. He picked up his weapon and was about to fight to the death with the Dog Emperor. Even Zhou Daoi and Gu Qing's lips were trembling as they chuckled. The Dog Emperor and the corpse began to fight. However, those who knew them were used to it. These two had always been at odds with each other since ancient times. It would be abnormal if they got along well one day. "Old and blessed with good fortune. Both your parents are alive. Are you still not satisfied?" The Dog Emperor shouted. The corpse couldn't stand it anymore and was about to break down. This damn dog had always been full of perfume. He was a dog that would infuriate people to death without paying for it. He was really touching a sore spot. There were many floating islands and jade palaces. Celestial music played, and brilliant petals fell from the sky. Auspicious birds danced in the air, and auspicious beasts guarded the surroundings. The banquet had begun. The Taoist ancestor was personally hosting it. Naturally, it was an unprecedented grand occasion. Couples arrived one after another. Zhou, she had also arrived. She was dressed in red and wore a phoenix crown. She was like a blooming red cloud, emitting a peaceful and peaceful brilliance. Chapter 16:30. The newcomer could be said to be extremely rude, arrogant, and simply unbridled. He was clearly here to stir up trouble. So how could he speak like this? He actually asked for the bride as a gift in front of everyone. This was intolerable bullying. Many people wanted nothing more than to tear him apart on the spot. In particular, the younger generation was hot-blooded and impulsive. All of them were seething with anger. They had never seen such an insolent and hateful person. He made such a request in front of all the kings and 2 Tao ancestors. Unreasonable wasn't enough to describe it. It was too outrageous, provoking everyone. He looked like a young man in gray robes with a head full of long hair. He was like a hawk and looked like a wolf, clearly an arrogant person. Although he looked young, everyone knew he wasn't simple. Otherwise, how could he dare to barge into the celestial court without any misgivings? Chu Feng's eyes were cold. His thick black hair fluttered, and a formless, murderous aura rushed into the sky. He had rarely been so eager to kill someone in the shortest amount of time. The other dared to be so domineering at his wedding. Even if he was frivolous, he had come to the wrong place and found the wrong person. "I will kill you," Chu Feng said. Those who understood him knew that he was truly angry. "Don't be angry. It's not worth getting angry at such an ugly person." Zhou held on to Chu Feng's hand and said softly, advising him not to get angry for this kind of person. "I won't let him affect my mood. I'll just get rid of him." Chu Feng nodded. "Uh-huh." The newcomer laughed wantonly, quite frivolous and wild. He stood in the celestial palace with his hands behind his back and said, "You can't kill me. Moreover, no one here can kill me." He was very certain, and his tone was indifferent. "You strange creature, you rashly barged into my celestial court, disrespectful again and again. Do you really think I don't know you have an old monster supporting you?" Gu Qing shouted. Moreover, he personally took action. He didn't order the other evolvers to capture this person because he felt that something was wrong. He didn't even let the immortal kings make things difficult for him, but instead personally took action. The Tao ancestors were angry, and the heavens resonated. The great Tao resonated, and countless laws appearing in the great world of the heavens. Gu Qing's huge hand pressed forward, directly pressing down. If there was no one to protect him, this person would definitely be turned into a pool of blood, his body and spirit scattered. However, behind the gray-robed youth, a man with eyes like golden lamps walked out. His long golden hair seemed to be cast from gold, and his face was as sharp as a knife. It was very three-dimensional, and his eyes were bright. He raised one hand, and with a bang, he blocked the Tao ancestors' attack. It could be said that this Tao ancestor who came from the source of the strangeness did as he pleased. He disregarded common sense, and there was no way to communicate with him. There were no so-called rules at all, and rules and regulations were ineffective against him. If he wanted to kill, he would kill. If he wanted to destroy, he would destroy. He was emotionless and cold, and wouldn't talk reason with others. Perhaps in his eyes, the creatures of all clans were nothing more than straw dogs. Many people's eyes felt like they were going to split apart. It was too bitter. There were no creatures left in that direction, not a single person alive. Their relatives and old friends were all there, so how could they accept this type of result? "Heavens, why are you so cruel? Strange freak!" Someone roared angrily. There were even young ladies who wept loudly, as if they were weeping blood. They truly couldn't accept the result of their loved ones dying miserably before their eyes. In reality, this was still the result of that Tao ancestors' free control, not expanding the Tao patterns, only targeting a specific group of people in that direction. Otherwise, it was unknown just how bloody and terrifying it would be. This result immediately made everyone recognize reality. An age of turmoil had indeed arrived. Blood and flames, as well as an endless great tribulation, were all before them. It was no longer just a rumor. The truth was just this bloody, pressing close to everyone's side. No one could escape. The most terrifying great age of blood was sweeping over. "You truly are domineering and unbridled," Gu Qing said through clenched teeth. Acting like this in front of him meant that he didn't place the two Tao ancestors of the heavens in his eyes at all. Zhou Daoi's expression was also gloomy. He raised the bronze spear in his hand and pointed it at the golden-haired Tao ancestor. In addition, the heavens burial diagram was also slowly rotating, floating above his head. However, before attacking, Zhou Daoi and Gu Qing also did something else. The ripples around their bodies were like waves, rippling outwards. The collapsed palaces, shattered islands, and the creatures whose bodies and souls had exploded actually reassembled and slowly reformed. This was the Tao ancestors' method. They couldn't stop the other party's palm in time, but they could seal the universe and protect their true spirits from being destroyed. Their blood of life remained. Now, with the Tao Ancestors method, those people could naturally be revived. Time seemed to flow backwards, and everything was reversed. All the evolvers came back to life. But to everyone, the experience just now was too terrifying. Under the Tao Ancestors' palm, they were torn to pieces by the Tao Ancestor, twisted into particles, and then condensed by Jiu Daoi and Gu Qing to reconstruct their true bodies. The pain, despair, and blood were truly too terrifying. He's alive. Grandfather has recovered. Heavens, Tao, Ancestor above, thank you for displaying your mighty power. Many people cried out in alarm, joy, and shock. Then they cheered loudly. Just now, they had truly made a trip between heaven and hell. It was torturous. Acting without restraint, casually killing my world's clans, and treating them like dirt and mud dogs. Do you really think you can act so unscrupulously? Jiu Daoi said coldly. He took action. The bronze spear in his hand directly pierced through the void, arriving in front of the golden-haired Tao Ancestor, stabbing towards his pure, white forehead. Ding! Sparks flew everywhere, and the Tao patterns shook violently. A pitch-black iron dagger appeared in the golden-haired man's hand, blasting away the sharp bronze spear. When the Tao Ancestor took action, it was enough to collapse the heavens and destroy the mountains and rivers. However, at the crucial moment, Gu Qing took action to protect the surroundings, covering the battlefield with endless, immortal light. In addition, Jiu Daoi also intentionally controlled himself, not collapsing the world. I advise you not to take action. The golden-haired Tao Ancestor from the strange, wretched earth spoke. Seniors from the Yang realm, I think you should stop, or else the consequences will be hard to predict. The gray-robed youth also spoke with a smile, not fearing the battle between Tao Ancestors. At the same time, two more people appeared behind him. They walked out together, standing in the reconstructed central heavenly palace, coldly staring at Jiu Daoi and Gu Qing. One was a man with a head full of black hair. His body was well-built, and he was extremely tall. He was like a piece of iron as he towered there, giving off a boundless sense of pressure. This was still because he didn't release his own Tao laws. If not for this, it would simply be unimaginable because this was definitely a terrifying Tao Ancestor. The other person had a head full of silver hair, shining brilliantly. He looked like a middle-aged man, but he was full of powerful and vigorous vitality. However, even though he restrained himself, there was still an inauspicious aura pervading the air, extremely intimidating. 3 Tao Ancestors descended, all of them creatures from the strange source. It was intimidating, so how were they supposed to resist? The people on the heaven side were simply in despair. This was still the initial stage of the chaotic era. So did this mean that they were going to be completely wiped out? There wasn't even a trace of light or hope to be seen. No matter who it was, they all felt a powerful pressure that made them feel like they were suffocating. 3 Tao Ancestors had personally descended, so how were they supposed to resist? This was something that had never happened before in this era. The Tao Ancestors' killing tribulation had arrived, causing the Dog Emperor's expression to change. He thought of some extremely dark ages. These inauspicious creatures even seemed somewhat familiar. Had they fought fiercely in the past? So, can you 2 elders calm down a bit? Don't be restless. Only those who are calm can live longer, the gray-robed youth said. It could be said that he was rather disrespectful, actually speaking in such a tone to the Tao Ancestors on the heaven side. He was clearly still far from this level. Jiu Daoi directly slapped him. He was just a junior, yet he dared to mock and ridicule him, threatening him not to act recklessly, or else he wouldn't live long. Truly enough, rumble. His palm descended, and the heavens and earth were overturned. However, it was blocked by the silver-haired Tao Ancestor. The Tao patterns between the 2 palms were densely packed, interweaving together, displaying the life and death of the great Tao. All of the energy and ripples did not erupt, and were instead restrained between the 2 palms. Tao friend, Attacking him is the same as slapping our faces. Although he is not well-liked, this time he is still our emissary, the silver-haired Tao ancestor said coldly, without any emotion. Clearly, the three Tao ancestors of the strange creatures did not like to talk much. For this reason, they specially brought the gray-robed youth, throwing all the trifling matters that emissaries should have to do to him. The gray-haired youth laughed and said, "Attacking me is the same as attacking the Tao ancestors." He first emphasized this, and then he began to talk business. "We did not come here to show off our strength. We're just too disappointed in you. This era, you're truly too weak. You have not been able to produce any shockingly brilliant pioneers. You do not have a creature of sufficient weight. You have truly disappointed us." He really did not leave them any face, and openly slapped the face of the cultivators of the heavens. He directly said that the evolvers of this era were weak. In addition, you have caught up with the bad times. The source of our ancestral land, the land of slumber, the most invincible, has awakened one after another. The inauspiciousness and strangeness that you speak of are destined to flourish to the extreme. This news could be said to be shocking. Throughout the ages, as long as the Dark Ages arrived, it would always be a boundless great calamity. And this time, it might be the extreme eruption of the inauspiciousness and strangeness. However, this side of the heavens seemed to be in the weakest era. In contrast, the two simply could not be compared. What could they use to contend against it? This was an era that caused people to despair. Our most powerful era has arrived, and the supreme creatures have all returned. Therefore, we have no patience with you all. You have not given us a pleasant surprise. Rather than that, it is better to push everything down and wipe it clean. Henceforth, a new era will begin, and this fertile land of life will germinate and begin anew. In this way, we will eventually find it. What they were looking for made people tremble with fear. An immortal king from the Yang realm couldn't help but say, "A certain end-of-path creature of high heavens had once interfered with the matters of the heavens and reached an agreement with your main sacrifice. The heavens have returned to one, and there is a slim chance of survival. There is another secret agreement, and now is still not the time to start a war." The gray-robed youth sneered. "What right does the heavens have to care about us? It's not like they are the strongest creature on our side. What a joke. Those few from high heavens can't do it themselves. That place will eventually turn into a ghost domain, and what remains is only an obsession. Yet, they still dare to interfere with the strongest will of the source of my race. Ridiculous." Some of the information he revealed, if one thought about it carefully, was truly horrifying. Jiu Daoi and Gu Qing didn't say anything. At their level, they all knew that in the end, everything depended on strength to speak. Everything else was false and unreliable. In this era, you are indeed very weak. Fellow Taoist, shall we go and exchange a few pointers? The silver-haired Tao ancestor indicated to Jiu Daoi. "You and I will also exchange pointers." The golden-haired Tao ancestor who appeared first said indifferently to Gu Qing. The black-robed Tao ancestor, who was as oppressive as an iron tower, still didn't say a word. He looked at everyone indifferently, but in the end he also left. The few Tao ancestors directly entered the outer realm and disappeared before everyone's eyes. The scene quieted down. Everyone's gazes were on the gray-robed young man. Killing intent filled the air, and many people felt very strong enmity towards him. "Everyone, don't be impatient. The few Tao ancestors might finish exchanging pointers very soon. I advise you not to act rashly. Targeting me is the same as declaring war against the three Tao ancestors. You can't bear the consequences," the gray-robed man said calmly. He was indeed fearless. As an emissary, he had the support of the three Tao ancestors. Strong reinforcements were just outside the sky, so he had nothing to fear. At this time, without the Tao ancestors to help him conceal his aura, everyone already knew his realm. A true immortal level creature's evolution level was not simple. However, if he relied on his own realm, he wouldn't have such confidence and attitude at all. At the same time, everyone also understood the three Tao ancestors' words. They said that he wasn't well-liked, and it was absolutely reasonable. Among the strange creatures, he was probably a loathsome character. At the very least, he was a chatterbox. A true immortal-level powerhouse should be reserved, and his temperament should be outstanding. How could he be so talkative? However, he didn't care at all. He was just so ostentatious, domineering, and rather frivolous. The eyes of some immortal kings were cold, revealing a cold chill. They wanted to kill him instantly, but when they thought of the three Tao ancestors, they held back. Because if they were even a little impulsive, if they provoked the three old monsters, no one would be able to stop them. Perhaps with a single thought, blood would overflow, and the people would be plunged into misery and suffering. I heard that the heavenly court has just been established, and I also learned that there are many newlyweds getting married here. It's a joyous day, so I came, the gray-robed man said to himself. The gray-robed man spoke without the slightest restraint, and he didn't regard himself as an outsider at all. He walked into the hall and picked up a bright red divine fruit from the jade plate before opening his mouth and biting into it, causing the sweet red juice to spill out of his mouth. Even the heavens have the virtue of cherishing life, let alone a great and peaceful eternal race like us. It's not that we have to destroy the various major evolutionary civilizations. We just want to find an answer, some kind of sustenance. Otherwise, even the great and invincible will always feel that it's not appropriate. Well, I'm going too far. The level involved is too high, and you guys will never understand it. You won't have the chance to walk into that realm. In fact, we don't want to easily shed blood and watch the flames of civilization extinguish one after another. After all, these are also lives. There's been enough blood and chaos in the past. It's better to have less killing. He actually said less killing, bemoaning the state of the universe and pitying the fate of mankind. He said that the strange race was a peaceful race. It was really laughable and indignant. This was strength. At the level of this race, even if they caused a monstrous bloody disaster, they could still write a brilliant chapter in history in the future. Therefore, I came here to save the new race. I yearn for the orthodoxy of a higher evolutionary civilization. We are willing to guide you and bring you to the brilliant ocean of civilization. He spoke very passionately, and he himself was immersed in it. However, the expressions of many people in the surroundings changed. The other party really had no scruples. He came to recruit them just like that, wanting to overturn the heavenly court. First, the three Tao ancestors of the strange side would suppress them, intimidate the heavens, and intimidate the newly established heavenly court. Then, the gray-robed man would come forward to disintegrate the various tribes. Their actions were simple and crude, directly interfering with the internal affairs of the heavens. Get lost, Chu Feng shouted. He couldn't bear this person anymore. In addition, there were so many immortal kings present, but this person treated them like nothing, arrogantly recruiting people. It was truly annoying and hateful. Didn't your teacher tell you to respect your seniors? Especially when I represent the three Tao ancestors to talk to you. You dare to be rude to me? Whose family child is this? Hurry up and drag him away to punish him. The gray-robed man had his hands behind his back, acting like an old man. He criticized Chu Feng here, wanting the people of the heavens to punish this young man. He himself had been disrespectful to the kings before and didn't have the heart to respect the Tao ancestors. He was a bit disrespectful, but now he was provoking the heavens instead. It was despicable. Many people looked at him coldly. The emotions in their hearts had been suppressed to a certain extent, and they were about to explode. Oh, you are one of the newlyweds. Young people really have no manners. Didn't I give you a congratulatory gift just now? You should return the gift. I already said, look, the woman at your side isn't bad. She's rarely seen, pure and beautiful. She should be the one to return the gift. He mentioned it again. This was truly humiliating. He didn't put Chu Feng in his eyes at all. Dog thing, no cat thing, shameless, disgusting monster. Are you courting death?" The dog emperor, who liked to have a mouth full of fragrances, spoke up for Chu Feng. Even though it loved to bite people and use all types of fragrances to baptize one's soul, it was still protective at critical moments, willing to take care of the people on its side. In reality, it wasn't the only one that stepped forward. The Monkey King, Li Su, and 6 or 7 other immortal kings also rushed over. There were even fallen immortal kings who had some relationship with the creatures of darkness who walked over to teach this true immortal a lesson. It could be seen that the fallen immortal king race truly wished to return to their origins. The dog emperor stopped the others. It raised its large paw, about to directly slap down and slap this true immortal to death, turning him into a pool of bloody paste. "Don't provoke a great disaster for the Yang realm," the gray-robed man shouted. Then he raised his head. An iron tower-like black figure appeared in the sky. It was too oppressive, making everyone's hearts feel stifled and almost suffocated. Even the immortal kings felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. They were like fledglings that had been targeted by primordial birds of prey and couldn't move at all. This was a kind of fear that originated from the depths of the soul, as if it carried the horrifying memories of their ancestors. Everyone froze on the spot. They were suppressed by the invisible aura of the Tao ancestor. Only after a moment did the oppressive black figure in the sky disappear. He didn't make a move. However, the scene was extremely depressing. How could they contend against this? Couldn't they even kill a true immortal who spoke wildly? There was more than one terrifying Tao ancestor at the source of these strange creatures. Today, 3 of them had directly descended. It was truly shocking and shook many people's inherent beliefs. However, there was one person who wasn't afraid. He slowly walked forward. It was Chu Feng. This made many people whose hearts were wavering feel deeply astonished. He, an evolver at the origin realm, was going to face a true immortal. Chu Feng, Zhou, she was worried, and her eyes were full of anxiety. Chu Feng waved his hand and told her not to worry. He naturally had a trump card if he dared to go out. Now, there was an incomparably strong, murderous intent hidden within his body. The strange creatures today had truly provoked his anger. The dog emperor and the others came back to their senses. They were also angry out of humiliation. As immortal kings, they were actually being suppressed like this. They couldn't even kill a true immortal. Who was it? It was a creature that had followed Celestial Emperor. How could it be intimidated? Not even by a Tao ancestor. At this moment, it stepped forward with a rotten corpse and was about to flip out. "Celestial Emperor, Blackie, do you see this? I'm your brother, and I've been humiliated. As Celestial Emperor, where are you? Xianzhao, kill those 3 Tao ancestors for me." The dog emperor roared. It really couldn't accept this. If it weren't for the safety of the others present, it would definitely have exploded. Even if that black figure wanted to kill it, it would dare to kill the true immortal in front of it first. It suppressed its anger and called out to the once truly invincible Celestial Emperor. It wanted to slap the Tao ancestors to death. The other immortal kings were also angry and walked forward together. Today, the strange creatures had really gone too far. Such humiliating provocation was intolerable. "Seniors, please stop for a moment. Let me handle everything," Chu Feng said, stopping the dog emperor, the rotten corpse, the battle-raging monkey king, and the others. Under his feet, there was some kind of mysterious ripple expanding like the Great Path. He stepped on it and approached the true immortal gray-robed young man step by step. The dog emperor's eyes widened. It wasn't the first time it had seen this kind of ripple. Back in the great battle of the Soul River, there was a mysterious expert who stepped on this kind of supreme Great Path light wave. Now, Chu Feng was actually stepping on the same ripple, causing the dog emperor's eyes to burst with divine light. It suddenly understood everything. It was actually this kid. Recently, it had been secretly observing Chu Feng and had long had a strange feeling. Now, it was undoubtedly confirmed. The rotten corpse was first shocked, and then it had the urge to curse. Back at the Soul River, the mysterious person had taken advantage of it, and now it all matched up. However, this time, Chu Feng didn't ripple with a terrifying energy aura. Everything was very calm, and outsiders didn't know his current strength. This was what Chu Feng was relying on. He wanted to kill this true immortal. Even if the Tao ancestors came, he still wanted to fight. At the very least, he wanted to fight first. Previously, he had other trump cards, such as the stone zither. He had once lightly flicked it and turned 800 cultivators who walked out from the depths of the reincarnation road into ashes. He didn't know if the stone zither would still have such power when facing a true immortal. But now, he didn't have to worry. Under the repeated pressure of the 3 Tao ancestors among the strange creatures, he had the feeling of that day again. Some kind of power in his body had awakened, and he wanted to vent it. He wanted to launch a terrifying attack and tear apart all the enemies in front of him. And this time, his perception was even deeper, and he could even vaguely sense the source of the power. Was this because he had advanced and become a life form at the primordial chaos level? Therefore, the power that could be used was even clearer, and its power would be even greater. Those who didn't know the background didn't know Chu Feng's current state at all. They didn't feel anything, and they didn't understand what kind of terrifying power was surging in his body. The supreme Tao law, the terrifying rule runes, and so on were all hibernating in the depths of his flesh and blood. They were incomparably restrained, and not even a trace of them leaked out. The gray-robed man glanced at him indifferently and didn't pay him any attention. He continued to speak to the elders of the various races. The heavens are declining, and the heavenly court is weak. It is destined to fall into eternal darkness and sink into total oblivion. Families that yearn for the light and are willing to walk on the supreme Tao path, please come to my side. This is one of the few opportunities. Otherwise, missing it will be the greatest regret of this life. And in the future, it will be the separation of yin and yang. I seem to already see the mountains and rivers stained with blood, the declining universe, the cold frozen earth, the shattered starry sky, and the ruins of civilizations without a single blade of grass growing. Everything has long been destined to decline and forever be silent. This is the final ending, the end. He spoke calmly, but all the families that had experienced the great calamity of an epoch and survived from the other epochs were silent, a chill running down their spines. Ignoring the fact that this person had beautified the bizarre races, it wasn't too much to mention the final ending he had described. After all, the destruction of the previous epochs had been extremely terrifying. And in this era, according to what he had said, the greatest will of the source of the bizarre had awakened and would return. The ominous power would reach its peak, and who could resist it? The ending would definitely be even more terrifying. The Yuan race had actually moved. With the immortal king of this race in the lead, a group of people walked over without hesitation and came to the side of the gray-robed man. The dog emperor growled, "I knew it. This kind of wolf-like clan should have been wiped out a long time ago. All of them should have been killed, saying that we would give them a chance. If they didn't repent and really betrayed the heavens, then we would suppress them and use them as cannon fodder. Now, a true immortal came to recruit them, and they immediately rebelled. How unpromising, how laughable, how shameful, how lamentable. He had long since wanted to kill everyone from the Yuan race to avenge Yao Yao and Yushang. But the new emperor felt that this wasn't a good influence. If the celestial court was just established, it would probably cause a huge commotion if they wiped out a royal clan that had defected to them on the surface. It would make the other ancient powers feel interdependent and develop other thoughts. Next, the fourth tribulation sparrow race also moved. Their immortal king led the crowd and stood on the gray-robed man's side. The stance and choice of the two races created a very bad demonstration effect. Moments later, several other races silently followed suit. You must know that defecting to them won't necessarily lead to a good end. You'll just be cannon fodder to do the dirty and tiring work. You might even fall into the darkness and get lost in the source of the gray mist. You'll be immersed in the ominous golden blood and lose your sense of self. You'll become an origin embryo to nurture ominous beings. The decayed corpse warned sternly. At this moment, some of the hesitant people quieted down. The gray-robed man smiled and didn't stop him from speaking. He looked at the Yuan race, the fourth tribulation sparrow race, and the other powerful royal clans. A wise choice. You'll all live for eternity. The rest are just ashes. After saying this, he looked at Chu Feng. During this process, Chu Feng didn't say anything and stood nearby. He didn't even stop the Yuan race and the fourth tribulation sparrow race, allowing them to pass. Today's special circumstances allowed him to distinguish between friend and foe. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing to filter out these weak-willed orthodoxies. His current state of mind was calm and wouldn't be angered by the gray-robed man's words. That was because he had enough confidence to crush them to death. Have you prepared the gift I spoke of? It's not for me. I like a nephew, and only such a pure and bright woman is worthy of him. The gray-robed man clasped his hands behind his back and swept his gaze over Chu Feng. This wasn't arrogance or intimidation, but the most direct humiliation. It was completely intentional. Then, he waved his hand, and a group of people flew over from the horizon. A young man among them bowed to greet him and called him uncle. The gray-haired man looked at Chu Feng and said, I heard you're somewhat famous, and my nephew is also a genius. It's just that his realm is higher than yours. I originally wanted him to exchange pointers with you, but that's too much of a bully. Forget it, I'll just take the gift back. The young man stood up and turned around to face Chu Feng, revealing a cold smile. Those on the heaven side who didn't know the inside story were worried for Chu Feng. They were worried about his impatience and Zhou Shi's fate. This was too much of a bully. The gray-robed man said, You're not convinced, are you? Full of resentment? Unfortunately, it's useless. What happened will happen in the end. He was calm and unruffled amidst the chaos, looking down on Chu Feng with indifference. He was using words to provoke others and even wanted to take away everything Chu Feng had. It was too vicious. Was he forcing him to fight with his life on the line? Someone was about to step forward, but Chu Feng waved his hand and stopped him. Are you done? That's about it. I'll send you and your nephew on their way first, and then I'll clean up the sect. Next, I'll go kill your Dao ancestor. Chu Feng's voice was calm and emotionless, but displayed a powerful will. What a joke. According to the Yang realm's standard of dividing realms, I'm already a quasi-great universe realm. What about you? Origin realm? You dare to boast shamelessly in front of me? The gray-robed man's nephew laughed coldly. Although he looked young, he had cultivated for a long time and was certainly much older than Chu Feng's age. Chu Feng only extended a finger and pointed it at him. There was cruelty in his indifference and killing intent. What was the meaning of this? Everyone was surprised. No matter how stunning someone who had just entered the Origin realm was, he might not be able to fight against a quasi-great universe realm powerhouse, right? Even the gray-robed man and his nephew were stunned. Then they laughed. Chu Feng said, What I mean is that one finger is enough to crush trash like you. What special methods do I need? I'll just flick my finger to kill you. Then, he made his move. He gently flicked his finger, and it instantly enlarged. It was like a pillar that supported the heavens had collapsed and smashed toward the gray-robed man's nephew. Dao patterns circulated and laws spread. This powerful young man couldn't dodge even if he wanted to. There was no time at all. Then, everyone was incomparably shocked. With a pop, he was blown up by Chu Feng's finger. His flesh and soul light exploded, and strange true blood splattered everywhere. Among them, a large piece of his flesh was directly pasted on the gray-robed man's face. His vision darkened, and he was completely stupefied. What was going on? A young evolver at the Origin realm had killed the nephew he admired and favored the most with a flick of his finger. He screamed. He simply didn't dare to believe his own eyes. He stretched out his hand and peeled off the large piece of flesh from his face. Then he saw a scene that made his eyes want to split open. This nephew of his had really exploded. His flesh and blood fell apart, and even his soul light had exploded. Moreover, after the ripples emitted by that finger swept past, his blood and soul were both burning. In a split second, he turned into ashes, and both his body and soul were destroyed. He died just like that. A quasi-great universe realm nephew, the successor he favored, had died so tragically in front of him. I'm going to pull out your bones, peel off your soul, and burn your bone marrow oil lamp, the gray-robed man roared. It seems like you still haven't recognized reality. Do you think it's so easy to take advantage of your grandpa, Chu? You came looking down on me. You're arrogant, rude, and domineering. Now, I'm teaching you how to behave. Chu Feng slapped him across the face. Even someone as strong as a perfected immortal couldn't dodge it. His face was smashed, and his teeth, mixed with blood, splattered everywhere. His entire body was sent flying and crashed into the palace hall. Chu Feng's feet shone and ripples expanded. Then he stretched out his hand and grabbed the gray-robed man back. He held him in his big hand as if he was holding a dead dog. Everyone was dumbfounded. They simply didn't dare to believe everything that was happening in front of them. Who dares to touch my clansman? The commotion here finally alarmed the Tao ancestor. A terrifying and oppressive tall black shadow appeared in the sky. I, your grandfather, am Chu Feng, Chu Feng. Chu Feng shouted. Everyone present felt their scalps go numb. Many evolvers were incomparably worried. If Chu Feng killed the gray-robed emissary like this and angered the Tao ancestor among the strange beings, wouldn't it provoke a monstrous bloody disaster? Don't be impulsive, someone advised. However, the Dog Emperor didn't agree. He directly berated, "Were you still enduring at this point? If you want to die, you'll die. If you want to live, you'll live." Now, there are no rules and regulations that can restrain them. The strange races are unbridled. Instead of that, we might as well kill to our heart's content. We'll do as we please and directly destroy the enemy. Otherwise, what's the use of kneeling? It's useless. You and I have no other choice. Let him go. In the sky, the black figure stood like a giant mountain. A terrifying aura spread out. Every word and action of a Tao ancestor could interfere with the universe and starry sky. Let your grandfather go. Chu Feng didn't have any fear in his heart at all. Then, as if he was kneading a clay doll, he pulled the gray-robed man away with a poof. One of his arms flew out and was burned to ashes. Ah, Tao ancestor, save me. This was the first time the gray-robed man felt such fear. His body trembled. Only at this moment did he realize what kind of being this was. It was a monster who dared to go against the Tao ancestor. It was unfathomable. Poof! Chu Feng tore off another part of the clay doll, but his eyes were fixed on the figure in the sky. He said, "Don't be hasty. I'll kill you right away. Since you see us as grass and can kill us as you please, then I don't have to see you as a human. You're just a chicken and a dog. I'll smash you with a hammer." Chapter 16:31. Beyond the heavens, the black shadow that gave people a boundless sense of oppression was incomparably cold. His pitch-black eyes were like two black holes that wanted to swallow people's souls. He didn't say anything, but it made people even more terrified. Even the rotten existences of the cosmos couldn't help but tremble. This wasn't because they were timid, but because a primal instinct drove them to submit. It was like an elk encountering a beast king. They would naturally be suppressed and tremble with fear. He silently stretched out a hand, and in a split second, the entire world went dark because the hand was too big. It covered the entire sky, squeezed the void, and covered the land where the celestial heavens was. When the Tao ancestor attacked, his hand covered the sky. It was unknown how many tens of thousands of kilometers long it was. The pitch-black hand turned the day into night. It was boundless and covered everything. He wanted to seize the vast land and all living things. He wanted to freeze time and make the river of time tremble and stop moving forward for him. All living things withered, and the great Kiliacosm was cold and silent. It trembled under this hand and rumbled. The order of the heavens collapsed, and the rules dissipated. Only a black hand reached into this world and became the only one. Rumble. Chu Feng wasn't afraid at all, and it didn't spoil him at all. What Tao ancestor? What pathfinder among the strange creatures? None of them could make him submit or fear them. The moment he saw the bad signs, He had already punched out in advance and attacked first. The fist seal that illuminated the great Kiliacosm rose up, rumbling and extremely resplendent. With a boom, his fist seal struck out beyond the heavens and kept the Tao ancestor outside of the Yang realm great cosmos. It collided with the majestic black hand. In the outer world, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Immortals cried and demons howled. All kinds of strange phenomena appeared and shone in the great Kiliacosm. It truly shook all the worlds. This was the first time people had seen such a young evolver dare to fight the Tao ancestor head-on and not be at a disadvantage. Everyone was stupefied and their minds were blank. No one had thought that there would be such a shocking accident. It was truly unbelievable. The majestic and frightening black figure of the Tao ancestor in the outer world also frowned. He was also shocked. Earlier, he was clearly an insignificant young man. How could he suddenly possess such power that could suppress the present world? The situation in the central heavenly palace changed abruptly. Everyone was petrified and completely stunned. What exactly had happened? It caused Chu Mo's strength to soar, as if he was a completely different person. Chu Feng's black hair danced in the wind, and his eyes were particularly spirited. With his back to the crowd, he faced the otherworldly Taoist ancestor alone, but he was not afraid at all. He gave off an incomparably powerful feeling, which made everyone feel at ease. Right now, he was dealing with that emissary. Chu Feng's hand grew larger, and he grabbed the gray-robed young man like he was a clay dog or a clay chicken. He pulled at him casually, causing the insufferably arrogant and frivolous gray-robed young man to growl, and then finally wail. It was because the gray-robed man really couldn't take it anymore. He was like a puppet that fell into the mouth of a vicious beast, torn apart beyond recognition. His body was in tatters. He was a true immortal-level creature, but now he was being casually manipulated and tossed around like a scarecrow. His bones and tendons had long since been broken, and there were no good places left. Blood was flowing everywhere, and he was in a rather miserable state. Everyone was like clay sculptures, and only their hearts were trembling. This was an emissary that came from the source of the bizarre, a genuine immortal-level creature. He was normally high and mighty, but now he was being kneaded and dragged around by Chu Mo like a clay chicken or a pottery dog. Stop, stop. I'm an emissary from my race's pure land. I want to discuss important matters with you all. You can't treat me like this. The gray-robed man was terrified. His body was about to be torn apart by Chu Feng, and there was no good place left on his body. If this went on, he would fall apart. Chu Feng didn't even pay attention to him. What emissary? What important matters? It was meaningless. What had he done before? He was arrogant and bossy, looking down on the races of the heavens, arrogant and unruly. Was he regretting it now? In addition, this gray-robed man had humiliated the evolvers at the scene time and time again. He was full of malice and actually dared to come to the Heavenly Court's headquarters to recruit people. He even dared to ask for Chu Feng's Tao companion as a gift. This was intolerable. Moreover, the so-called emissary sent by the bizarre races had no sincerity at all. He didn't come for a secret discussion and was completely looking down on them. He mainly came to size up the Heavenly Court's current situation and strength. Chu Feng didn't have much to say to this person. He would first give him the generous reward he deserved, and then directly kill him. Without a doubt, this person wasn't very well liked in the bizarre land. Even the ominous Tao ancestor had directly said this not long ago. But this kind of person must have some background to be able to become an emissary. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been his turn to come here. Tao ancestor, please descend your Dharma body and split open this world to save this junior. At this moment, the gray-robed man was finally terrified. He was no longer as domineering and directly cried for help. In the sky, a hazy black light blossomed. Then, it was as if countless black suns had exploded and crashed down, accompanied by endless primal chaos energy. The black shadow showed its might and attacked again. However, Chu Feng was already prepared. This time, the ripples under his feet shone and turned into dazzling golden waves, sweeping up and drowning the sky. The Tao ancestor of the bizarre races was once again blocked outside the large world and couldn't enter. Bang! At the same time, Chu Feng raised his hand and gave the gray-robed man a slap. This time, his entire head was slanted and his neck was unnaturally twisted. You still dare to talk without thinking? Today, I'll beat you until you become autistic. Chu Feng slapped him again. Previously, this gray-robed man was too hateful. Now, he naturally wouldn't be lenient. "You can't do this to me," shouted the gray-robed man. He was indeed afraid. This young monster could do whatever he wanted, and in the end, he would definitely be killed. He was very clear that the other party would destroy his body and soul, and wouldn't give him any chance to recover. No matter what realm, how many people could be fearless and fearless of death? At least, the gray-robed man didn't want to die. His voice was trembling. "Why can't I do this to you? There's nothing special about it." Chu Feng used his actions to answer him. He gave him a round of beatings, beating him up with all his might. All the bones in the gray-robed man's body were broken. All his teeth had fallen out, and his body was covered in blood. Hitting me is like targeting the Tao ancestor. If you go on like this, the Tao ancestor won't let you go. He was panicking and afraid that he would die in the next moment. He spoke without thinking and actually threatened Chu Feng. Chu Feng immediately laughed and responded this time, saying, "I even hit the Tao ancestor, let alone you." As he spoke, he grabbed the gray-robed man and soared into the sky as if he was carrying a ragged bag. He took the initiative to kill his way to the outside world to fight with the Black Shadow. Countless evolvers in the Yang realm had long since stared blankly. Today was simply subversive. Who would have thought that Chu Feng would suddenly flip out and directly hit the Tao ancestor? Chu Feng carried the gray-robed man to the outside world and left the large world behind him. Many top powerhouses in the Yang realm, such as the old patriarch of a clan and the immortal king who was like a living fossil, immediately activated their secret treasures and immortal mirrors to observe this battle. Die or let him go. The Black Shadow was tall, as if he was standing in a cosmic black hole, swallowing the surrounding light beams. His voice was cold and emotionless as it locked onto Chu Feng. Everyone in the Yang realm who saw this scene was horrified. The Black Shadow wasn't joking. Was he warning Chu Feng that he was going to kill him? "Don't give me orders. You and I are at the same level. You don't have any qualifications. Besides, I, Grandpa Chu, have already said that I'm going to kill the Tao ancestor today." Boom! In the next moment, no one would have thought that the consequences of Chu Feng's outburst would be so shocking. It was simply too terrifying. Even Chu Feng himself didn't expect that the power of this attack would be so great. A hazy radiance swept across the outside world, as if it was going to penetrate countless large universes. It split the front open and cut off the river of time. It was a zither made of stone. It was being used by Chu Feng as a big stick. He directly swung it and smashed it forward. Even the kings were dumbfounded. That was a zither, an elegant object. In the end, Chu Feng swung it so violently and smashed it into the Tao ancestor's body. Everyone's eyes were fixed on him. They were truly speechless. Recklessly wasting natural resources, burning the zither and cooking the crane, casting a bright pearl into the dark. At this moment, a bunch of similar words involuntarily appeared in the minds of the kings. Everyone was dumbfounded. Chu Feng's valiance really stunned a group of old monsters. There was really no one else who could use an elegant object as a hammer and a stick to smash people. However, that kind of power was truly shocking and intimidating. The stone zither split open the outside world and penetrated some broken and lifeless dead universes. It was like plowing the ground and nothing could stop it. Even if it was a complete large universe with complete Tao laws, if it blocked the front, it would definitely be pierced through now. It was enough to split open a top-notch great world. One could imagine the power of this attack. The Black Shadow was very strong, but he didn't expect Chu Feng to use the zither as a hammer and a big stick. He didn't dodge when he smashed into his body. He was smashed so hard that he staggered and couldn't stand steadily. Then, he was directly sent flying. His mouth was full of bloody foam. He was actually injured. When they saw this scene, all the kings were almost petrified. They didn't dare to believe that such a reckless waste of natural resources and burning the zither and cooking the crane attack could actually injure an extremely powerful Tao ancestor. At this time, Chu Feng himself was also lost in thought. Just what kind of background did the stone zither have that kind of power? He secretly thought back. No wonder even the stone jar reacted to it back then. It was really extremely terrifying. Then, he didn't pay attention to the black shadow with cold eyes. He had already climbed up and was facing him with boundless killing intent. On the contrary, he lifted the gray-robed man and said, "You said that I hit you as if I was targeting the Tao ancestor? That seems to make sense. I hit you, and then I also hit your Tao ancestor. It's really the same. I hit you at the same time." The gray-robed man was like a little chick being carried by Chu Feng. He was really scared now and couldn't help but tremble. What kind of monster was this? He really wanted to roar out loud. That was a peerless Tao ancestor, but he was actually hit by this monster Chu. He was solidly smashed into his body, and his mouth was full of bloody foam. It was extremely frightening. How could the gray-robed man not panic? "Useless thing, what are you shaking for?" Chu Feng disliked the gray-robed man in his hands. He didn't want to torture him anymore. Then he pulled, and with a tragic scream, he tore the gray-robed man apart. He killed him on the spot, destroying his body and soul. Although he's not a big deal in the Grey Mist clan and is very annoying, there's one thing that can't be denied. He's the direct descendant of the clan, so he has the right to be the emissary this time. And you've caused a great disaster, and in the future, you will certainly die in the hands of the living beings on the road. The Black Shadow's words were cold, as if revealing Chu Feng's miserable future. "Who dares to touch me?" Chu Feng was fearless. He said, "Starting with you, I'll kill a Tao ancestor today for you to see. Let those so-called strange and powerful clans prepare more coffins." Then, he picked up the Shurchin and rushed forward again. He began to smash people again. Obviously, the commotion here had alarmed the other two pairs of Tao ancestors who were fighting fiercely. Whether it was Jiu Daoi or Gu Qing, they both sensed it. They looked like they had seen a ghost, and through the endless void, they looked over. This kid could stand shoulder to shoulder with them and fight the terrifying Tao ancestors together. "Seniors, how are you guys?" Chu Feng also found them and asked from a distance of billions of miles. Now, he had enough power. Even though he was witnessing a great battle between Tao ancestors, he didn't feel any discomfort and was quite calm. "I'm going to find a chance to kill him." The old man's words were as fierce as ever. "I'm also okay." Gu Qing didn't have enough energy and was obviously injured. He was indeed not a match for the fierce and intimidating golden-haired Tao ancestor. Boom! At this time, the golden-haired Tao ancestor's eyes were like swords, shooting out a terrifying beam of light. It cut through the river of time, and at the same time, split Gu Qing. This was too terrifying. The Tao ancestors of the strange clans were extremely dangerous. Did they want to destroy the destiny of the Tao and kill the new emperor of the heavens? Heaven and earth collapsed, and the chaos outside exploded. Some of the remaining dead universes were completely torn apart, and they were about to meet their end prematurely. Gu Qing was actually cracked, and he was quite miserable. He was covered in blood, and the wound from his forehead all the way to his chest and abdomen, almost about to burst open. "Senior, are you okay?" Chu Feng shouted while attacking the Black Shadow. "I'm fine. We're both Tao ancestors. If he wants to wear me down, he probably won't have much hope without 1,000 years." Obviously, Gu Qing was holding on, and his strength was far from his opponent's. Although fierce battles between Tao ancestors of the same level could easily go on for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years, but if the difference in cultivation was too obvious, then it was a different story. "But you're cracked." Chu Feng was worried. He fought while constantly paying attention to Gu Qing. "It's fine. I'll get used to it as I crack, Gu Qing replied. Then, he repaired the great Dao injury himself, making up for the damage to his physical body. Chu Feng was speechless. Some of the top immortal kings, through special methods, watched the battle outside the world. They also looked at each other, speechless. No, if he dares to touch you and make you crack, I'll kill one of their Dao ancestors first. Senior Gu, hold on, and wait for me to kill a Dao ancestor. Chu Feng shouted. Whether it was 9 Daoi, Gu Qing, or the various kings, they were all tongue-tied and didn't know what to say. Killing a Dao ancestor was not that simple. It would take a long time to slowly wear it down. Rumble. Then, everyone saw that Chu Feng was like a madman. He lifted the stone zither and smashed the black shadow all over the world, sending him tumbling over and over again. The black shadow's body was covered in blood. The Dao ancestor's blood was splashed outside the world. This left everyone dumbfounded. Even 9 Daoi and Gu Qing were stunned. They felt that this was very unreal. Why aren't you dead yet? I'm going to kill you. Hurry up and die. Are you a stone from the latrine? You're smelly and hard. How can you be so sturdy? Hurry up and die. Chu Feng swung the stone zither and smashed it forward recklessly. He was furious. In reality, the Black Shadow was even more furious. He really couldn't bear it. He wasn't a rotten creature of the universe, and he was definitely not immortal. He was a powerful Dao ancestor. How could he be easily killed by a creature of the same level? Even if it was a top Dao ancestor, how many could directly kill him? And this young monster in front of him was actually so angry, all because he couldn't immediately kill him. How preposterous! This junior actually dared to look down on him. The Black Shadow felt incomparably angry, and he really couldn't bear it anymore. Suddenly, Chu Feng plucked the only string on the stone zither. That sparkling silk thread, like the trajectory of the boundless great Tao, instantly slashed out. With a poof, it cut through the Black Shadow's flesh and almost cut the ominous Tao ancestor in half. The Black Shadow was extremely shocked and deeply horrified. He was directly sent flying, and a large amount of Tao ancestors' true blood poured out in torrents. Everyone was dumbfounded. Why are you still alive? Your companion dared to split Senior Gu Qing's Tao, so I'll immediately make your Tao collapse. Chu Feng chased after him like a crazy demon. That kind of feeling was really too righteous. Everyone felt like they were dreaming. This madman, Chu, couldn't really think that he could kill a Dao ancestor on the spot. Could he? Now, it seemed that he really did have that kind of mentality. If he still didn't kill a powerful Dao ancestor, he seemed to go even crazier. This madman, damn it, there's no justice in this world. At this moment, not to mention the others, even the other 2 terrifying Dao ancestors from the strange land of wretchedness couldn't help but curse and curse. Chapter 16:32. With a bang, Chu Feng swung the stone zither and smashed it forward again. Large amounts of blood appeared on the black-robed Dao ancestor's body. His battle clothes were tattered, and his eyes were filled with endless coldness. However, he couldn't quickly kill this young man. Moreover, he had already been injured. He used a shocking method to resist. A great Dao rune blossomed in front of the black-robed Dao ancestor, illuminating the world. Within it, there were scenes of the universe being born and destroyed, accompanied by the ebb and flow of chaos. It was revealing the changes of the universe. Outside the great Dao rune, there was a river of time that revolved around it. It was extremely terrifying. The pressure it emitted caused the heavens to tremble and rumble. The evolvers of all races couldn't help but tremble. It felt like the end of the world had arrived. However, when the stone zither smashed down, everything changed. With a bang, the entire great Dao rune exploded, turning into dazzling beams of light that flew everywhere. The black-robed Dao ancestor groaned and staggered backwards. His pupils constricted. Even the Dao rune had been smashed apart. The collapsed great Dao rune was like hundreds of thousands of immortal swords slashing out at the same time. In an instant, many beams of light shot onto the black-robed Tao ancestor's body. The distance was too close, and the backlash caused him to be dripping with blood. In the distance, the other two Tao ancestors from the strange races gasped. What kind of monster had their companion encountered? Although they were amazed by Chu Feng's strength, what made them feel even more uneasy was that there was an indescribable feeling enveloping the young man's body. From their point of view, Chu Feng was too young. It was impossible for him to have this kind of strength. Could it be that this involved a being at the end of the road? Otherwise, how could he injure the Tao ancestor again and again? However, after the supreme being of the vile earth gazed at the universe, he had deduced that there were no such beings in the heavens. Why don't you hurry up and die? Hurry up and collapse. Face the tribulation. Chu Feng shouted impatiently. He was clearly the one who injured the enemy, but he was even more anxious than the other. He was very dissatisfied and shouted anxiously, "You're going too far." The black-robed Tao ancestor's voice was ice-cold. He was injured, but he was still urged to die. He really couldn't accept this and couldn't endure it. The black-robed Tao father let out a soft shout. With a boom, the primordial chaos immortal lightning exploded. Boundless beams of light filled the entire outer realms, enough to pierce through multiple major worlds. All the primal chaos lightning gathered at one point and struck towards Chu Feng. Right at this moment, the outside world exploded, and the dark abyss became a resplendent land. There were Tao patterns everywhere, and countless lightning bolts formed a sea of lightning filled with primal chaos. This scene was too terrifying. It was definitely enough to destroy the world. The so-called anger of the Tao ancestor was the anger of thunder. The astronomical phenomenon shocked the past and present. Lightning was enough to break the river of time and destroy the present world that was full of vitality. Even though Chu Feng was very strong now, if he was hit, he would still be in danger. Buzz! Beneath Chu Feng's feet, golden ripples rapidly spread out. Then, like waves, they swept up into the sky and blocked the boundless chaotic sea of lightning. This is... Tao Father Blackfear's heart throbbed. How could this be? That young man's feet shook and unfathomable Tao patterns bloomed, blocking his attack that could destroy the world. Moreover, as the golden ripples erupted, Chu Feng felt that the power he could use had increased by another level. He plucked the zither strings once again. In reality, he was very rashly pulling the zither strings, using all his strength to stretch them into the shape of a full moon. Then, he suddenly let go. The only zither string tore through the air like sword light, drawing an unpredictable arc and bursting with blinding light. It was tainted with golden ripples as it blasted towards Tao Father Blackfear. This time, it wasn't just the zither strings attack. It was also accompanied by the ripples beneath Chu Feng's feet. The two merged together, and it was as if a brilliant sea of Tao had been formed. A vast expanse of light, majestic and dazzling, so heavy that it was about to crush the various major worlds, crashed into the black-robed Tao Father's body just like that. He couldn't dodge it even if he wanted to, because the entire outside world was covered by this all-encompassing ball of light, compressing all of space-time. With a bang, the black-robed Tao Father was smashed heavily into the ground. This time, he was in an even worse state. Blood sprayed from his mouth, his hair was disheveled, and even his ears were bleeding. What kind of method was this? He felt even more enraged. His fundamental Tao heart, which hadn't moved for many years, was now actually no longer calm, and his mentality was a bit out of balance. He had cultivated for an ancient time and evolved for who knew how many tens of thousands of years, many epochs. Only then did he stand high and mighty, possessing the strength to destroy worlds and the greater thousand universes. But his opponent was nothing more than a little brat, a young man born in this world. Yet he was actually able to injure him again and again. I really can't take it anymore. How can you be so tenacious? You still haven't been beaten to death. Chu Feng roared. His eyes were like lightning, and his hair was flying wildly. He was clearly very angry. The black-robed Deofather's face twitched, and he immediately roared. He really couldn't suppress the raging flames of anger in his heart anymore. You injured me, but you're angry and indignant. You've really gone too far. The black-robed Deofather's mentality was a bit on the verge of collapse. His opponent's series of actions weren't very harmful, but they were extremely insulting. He really was a piece of sh*t. Then, the two of them charged together, using all kinds of fierce techniques to fight to the death. It was as if they wouldn't stop until they slaughtered their opponent. In reality, Chu Feng really didn't mean to humiliate him. He was indeed very anxious, because his combat strength didn't belong to him. Just like during the Battle of the Soul River, it was an external power. He couldn't predict when this mysterious power would fade, so he was anxious and wanted nothing more than to kill the Tao Father immediately. If he lost his Tao Father level techniques at a critical moment, it would definitely be disastrous. At that time, not to mention swinging the stone zither, even if he lifted the body of a creature at the end of the road and smashed it against the Tao Father, it would still be difficult to successfully kill him. If Chu Feng returned to his normal state, whether it was his strength, reaction speed, or his killing techniques, they would all collapse exponentially. He wouldn't be able to fight the Tao Father at all. A baby holding a sharp weapon would also find it difficult to injure an adult. Kill, 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 he roared, looking as if he was cutting off all means of retreat. The more the black-robed Tao Father watched, the angrier he became. His opponent was actually shouting. Who was the victim here? How infuriating! Behind him, an ancient tablet appeared, black patterns interweaved, like countless black suns shining, accompanying his attack with black light. This was a strange, secret treasure he had refined for many years, and he rarely showed it. Now, he had nothing to say. Only by killing this young madman in front of him could he wash away his anger and humiliation. Boom! The black ancient tablet glowed, and countless characters flowed out from it. They were all ominous characters that came from the origin of the strange race's civilization. Chu Feng didn't recognize them, and even when he used the Great Tao to communicate with them, he couldn't distinguish their meaning. However, these characters were too corrosive, and their offensive power was unparalleled. They instantly melted the Great Tao's rules, annihilating all kinds of divine chains of order in the void. However, Chu Feng was unafraid. Now, the golden characters under his feet undulated, becoming more and more intense, stirring up golden waves like a sea. Moreover, some kind of power in his flesh became even stronger, giving him an impulse to roar at the sky. He held the stone zither in one hand and formed a fist seal with the other. He suddenly rushed over, already going crazy before the battle, erupting with terrifying energy waves. Ding! A zither string leapt up, and the vibrations shook the world. It completely penetrated the large amount of black characters that were corroding over, erupting with heaven overflowing fluctuations. Black light poured out in torrents, scattering outwards. However, those characters didn't completely disappear. They actually broke down into strokes, but still didn't disappear. During this process, black blood splashed out. In the distance, Nine Dowie and Gu Qing both gasped. They were old monsters with profound knowledge and experience. Those black characters flowed with true blood, so their origins were definitely terrifying. All of the strokes reassembled in the outside world, condensing once again. They resonated with the ancient black tablet, suppressing towards Chu Feng again. It was as if millions and millions of black stars were resonating and pressing down. With a wung sound, the stone jar in Chu Feng's body shone, stirring up boundless golden ripples. It wasn't limited to the light under his feet, but his entire body was suffused with a terrifying aura. Mysterious patterns wrapped around him, making him more and more powerful. Chu Feng released a long roar. This type of feeling was too strange. He needed a vent, thirsting for the most intense battle. This time, he carried the stone zither on his back and directly swung his fists. He couldn't bear it any longer and wanted to engage in the most direct life and death battle. Don't drop your weapons. Smash him. 9 Dowie shouted in the distance. The word smash caused many people's faces to twitch. They cursed inwardly. This old fellow was indeed in the same camp as Demon King Chu. Elegant objects were used in their hands, just like a foundation to smash people. Dong! Chu Feng paid them no heed. A type of battle instinct drove him. Fist seals erupted, so bright that many people couldn't open their eyes and look straight at him. His fist seals collapsed the outside world, destroyed all kinds of laws, and swept away the black characters. Crack! It was as if something had snapped. The golden patterns outside his body cut apart and minced the ancient black characters and strokes. It was extremely terrifying. At the same time, the tablet behind a black-robed Tao ancestor trembled. The carvings on it were actually becoming indistinct. Those ancient characters dimmed from the source and were actually about to be completely obliterated. In the blink of an eye, the number of characters on the tablet decreased sharply. Many areas were bare, and there were interweaving cracks with black blood seeping out. At the same time, Chu Feng's fist seal also blasted over. It broke through the Tao ancestor's protective light screen and collided with his palm and fingers. Boom! The world shook violently, and the river of time appeared. It was as if the ancient times had been overturned. The great battle between the two affected the stability of time. At this moment, the black-robed Tao ancestor staggered and actually retreated a certain distance. The robe sleeve on his forearm had been completely torn apart. His palm and fingers were badly mangled and bleeding continuously. The web between his thumb and forefinger was split open, and the great Tao runes on the wound flickered and tangled with the true blood. He had actually been injured once again. During the physical collision, his palm had been shattered by the other party's fist seal, and the true blood of the Tao ancestor had spilled out. After the fierce collision, Chu Feng's fist seal and the Tao ancestor's palm had shaken violently, but he had also calmed down at this moment. He looked down at his hands. They weren't injured at all. Not even a trace of blood seeped out. This shocked even him. He had fought the Tao ancestor with his bare hands. Just now, he had been led by an inexplicable emotion. He had uncontrollably abandoned the stone zither and used his fist to hit the Tao ancestor. In the end, he wasn't injured, and he wasn't at a disadvantage. At this moment, Chu Feng could more clearly feel the source of his power. None of this was his, but he could use it, even more than during the battle at the River of Souls. Last time, at the River of Souls, he had been very passive. He had been completely dominated by the power in his body. But today, he was quite active, and he could use this power more freely. But now, there was something that made him uneasy. His emotions were somewhat out of control, and he had almost lost control. He always wanted a vent. He was like a prisoner who had been locked up for a long time, and now that he suddenly had a chance, he attacked without care. Two kinds of power. Chu Feng looked inside and examined himself. In the fierce battle with the Tao ancestor just now, he had found the source of his power. It was actually somewhat different from what he had imagined. The battle power he had now didn't all come from the stone jar. A part of it actually came from the reincarnation earth. The crystalline earth was at the bottom of the jar. He had brought it out from the end of the reincarnation path, but he had never known what its nature was. Now, he felt very strange and mysterious. This thing could help him fight? Earlier, when he had used the stone zither, it was thanks to the reincarnation earth. It contained power that seeped into his flesh and blood, making him extremely strong and sturdy. He could use his bare hands to attack the Tao ancestor. There was no need to mention the stone jar. Those golden ripples were some of the patterns that rippled when it shone. Now is the time. I want to kill the Tao ancestor. Chu Feng rushed forward again, about to start a massacre. He was worried that the power that didn't belong to him would suddenly disappear. Junior, the black-robed Tao ancestor's expression was very cold. Even those senior Tao ancestors didn't dare to underestimate him. But this unbelievably young guy in front of him kept saying that he wanted to kill him and kill a Tao ancestor. He was really crazy. Bang, bang, bang. In the fierce battle, Tao patterns flowed in Chu Feng's eyes. His flesh and blood were supported by great power. His fist imprints shone, shaking the outer world. Fragments of time flew everywhere, and the entire space-time was about to collapse. The black-robed Tao ancestor produced a bronze mirror. During this process, it was destroyed by Chu Feng. The secret treasure fragments shot in all directions, some of them piercing into the strange Tao ancestor's flesh. This made his expression change. What kind of special evolved being had he encountered? It was too abnormal. Who exactly had walked out of the vile earth? Why did it feel like the other party was more like a monster? The black-robed Tao ancestor was dripping with blood. He fought fiercely. His body cracked under the ultimate fist, and his arms were tattered. His hands actually almost exploded. Rumble. The golden patterns on Chu Feng's body interweaved, drowning out the area in front of him. It actually temporarily imprisoned everything. All things withered, and space-time instantly froze. Even the black-robed Tao ancestor's movements became sluggish. His soul was no longer active, and it seemed like it was going to stop. Chu Feng seized the opportunity. Fist light shone, piercing through the sky of history, illuminating the illusory scene of the future. The fist intent was unrivaled. He roared loudly, breaking through the limit. Dazzling light flickered, and the great thousand universes resonated. After Chu Feng's fist smashed out, it pierced through the black-robed Tao ancestor's chest, making it go through from front to back. True blood flowed out. Bang! His other fist smashed into the black-robed Tao ancestor's forehead, splitting open the space between his brows. A portion of his soul light was scattered, and it became incomparably dim. Moreover, there was a special Tao ancestor's true blood flowing out from the cracked forehead. It released a terrifying sound of the great Tao collapsing. There was a mournful wail, an ancient sacrificial sound, and even an ending song of the future erasure. However, Tao ancestors were extraordinary creatures in the end. They couldn't be surmised. The tall black-robed man suddenly trembled. He finally broke free from his bindings and recovered. He fell back, and his body and soul shone at the same time, recovering. Suddenly, just as Chu Feng took the initiative and had the upper hand, he felt his hair stand on end, and a layer of goosebumps appeared on his body. Something that made his hair stand on end had appeared, but this kind of threat didn't come from the injured Tao ancestor, but from himself. At this moment, he felt as if someone was blowing cold air on his neck. There was some creature lying on his back. It was too sudden, and it was exceptionally horrifying. One had to know that he was in the middle of a great battle, fighting to the death against the Tao ancestor. But an unforeseen event happened at this critical juncture. He immediately realized that it was similar to the abnormal phenomenon at the Soul River. At that time, some monsters seemed to be coming out, and it made him tremble with fear. Apart from the jar, there's another ghost hiding in the reincarnation earth. Chu Feng fell back, immediately pulling away from the black-robed Tao ancestor. He was secretly on guard, and his scalp was a bit numb, because at this moment there was an ice-cold hand touching the back of his neck, and there was even a wet breath that seemed to want to lick his ear. Who are you? Regardless of whether it's a man or a woman or a man, it's forbidden to touch. Chu Feng secretly transmitted his voice, but he didn't dare to speak directly. He was afraid that the black-robed Tao ancestor would know that something was wrong with his body. Hiss! The cold breath brushed past his ear like a sigh, but also like a breath of cold air. It made people have bad associations. Could it be that some otherworldly item was interested in his yang qi? Could it be a female ghost? Chu Feng muttered inwardly. He warned the other party not to cause trouble now to avoid accidents. However, that thing ignored him, and the ice-cold hand stroked the back of his neck, causing his hair to stand on end. He really couldn't stand it. Chu Feng really felt that he was carrying a living creature on his back. He couldn't bear it anymore, and he reached behind him to grab it. In the end, he actually touched a pair of ice-cold and smooth long legs. He was stunned at that time. Could it really be a female ghost? What kind of background did it have? What kind of great divine ability could actually hibernate on his body like this. While Chu Feng was amazed, he was also quite scared. Who would be willing to coexist with others? This thing, regardless of whether it was a woman or a man, had lived in the land of reincarnation for such a long time and entangled with him, carrying a living creature on his back, even if it was a beautiful woman, made Chu Feng uncomfortable from head to toe. Moreover, it might be a super malicious ghost that couldn't be described. After all, this thing had followed him out from the soul, flesh, in the deepest depths of reincarnation. He was speculating about the origin of this existence. It was already thoroughly dead, and even its soul light had long since turned to dust. But in the end, it could still follow him out from the end of reincarnation. It absolutely wasn't simple. Chu Feng was looking for clues, guessing who it was. Female ghost, beautiful woman, ice cold, and smooth long legs. These series of clues seemed to point to a certain deceased creature of the Lu Jin level in history. In the next moment, the feeling that Chu Feng's palm was reaching behind him suddenly changed. It was no longer smooth and cold long legs. There was fur there, so much so that these hairs were somewhat prickly. It was as if those legs had grown densely packed, large steel needles. Chu Feng's scalp immediately exploded. Even though he knew that he was carrying a ghost on his back before, it was still a beautiful ghost, so it wasn't so disgusting. But now, the feeling was completely different. Was this some kind of coarse-haired monster transforming? Or was it another malicious ghost that he didn't understand and couldn't surmise? The most terrifying thing was that the wetness at the side of his ears was even more obvious. It was as if something was going to bite him. Chu Feng howled and his whole body trembled. It was as if he wanted to throw something off his back. He really couldn't stand this kind of horrifying treatment. What kind of monster was that? What kind of creature was the black-robed Dao ancestor? He had been staring at Chu Feng all along and had long sensed that something was wrong with him. Now that he saw him, it was as if he had gone crazy and attacked at the first instant. The attack of a Dao ancestor wasn't just for show. It could easily cause the world to be destroyed and the universe to collapse. Its attack power was too strong. That black stone tablet directly blasted in front of Chu Feng. Moreover, there was also a strange picture scroll that fell on top of Chu Feng's head, wanting to suck him in. In addition, the black-robed Dao ancestor himself also attacked. Endless black light was released. He was like a demon lord that had descended to destroy the world. He stretched out his large hand to suppress and kill Chu Feng. As for the runes of the great Dao, they were densely packed and filled the void of the universe. And the inauspicious heavenly sword that was formed from order was boundlessly thick. It surpassed the limit and connected with the outside world, tearing apart this ownerless world that was surging with chaos. If this was the Yang realm, just one of these sword lights would be enough to penetrate the universe. This boundless attack arrived in front of Chu Feng and covered him. The stone tablet shook violently, causing him to stagger. The sword light was like a rainbow, piercing through the golden ripples, wanting to cut him into a bloody pulp. As for the black-robed Dao ancestor himself, with a flip of his hand, it was like the firmament was pressing down. From birth to destruction, the lines on his palm represented the supreme truth of the heavenly Dao. His two palms joined together, wanting to grind Chu Feng into pieces. Chu Feng was a little miserable. He was sent flying by the stone tablet and rolled up by a picture. Then his body was slapped by two large hands and crushed. In the meantime, he was also struck by countless thick sword lights. If it were someone else, they would have already exploded and died countless times. Even so, blood kept dripping from the corner of Chu Feng's mouth. He was entangled by the monster behind him and faced the fierce attack of the Dao ancestor. He was really caught unprepared. Be quiet and don't make trouble. Lie by my side. Maybe you'll need me to enlighten you in the future, shouted Chu Feng. What the hell? You want to enlighten me? The black-robed Dao ancestor was furious. Do you want to be like the mechanical Buddha race or the Vajra Taoist race, who easily enlightened other races? Obviously, he had misunderstood. He felt that this young monster was too king hateful. One moment, he wanted to kill him, and the next moment, he wanted to enlighten him. To a Tao ancestor like him, this was extremely insulting. The black-robed Tao ancestor had the upper hand and was unforgiving. While Chu Feng was tired, he attacked violently, and the runes of the great Tao boiled. Black blood mist filled the air around him, making him look tall and intimidating. It was as if there was a life form at the end of the road, standing behind him in the distant void, intimidating the past, present, and future. Chu Feng coughed up blood and struggled with all his might, wanting to break free from the entanglement behind him. Was that thing really going to eat him? The ice-cold hands, the hairy thighs, and the wet mouth were almost touching his skin. Boom! At the same time, he was struck by the Tao ancestor. The other party's continuous attacks caused him to spit out a few mouthfuls of blood. He was in an incomparably sorry state and was in a dangerous situation. In the end, he's not a true Tao ancestor. He's done for. In the Yang realm, in the central heavenly palace, the Yuan race, the fourth tribulation sparrow race, and the other races that had decided to rebel against the heavens and stand together with the strange life form muttered, "What are you saying?" In the sky, someone immediately retorted, staring coldly at the race that had betrayed them. Li Su, the Monkey King, and the others even personally looked over, killing intent filling the air. Both sides had immortal kings. Once a battle broke out, this place would inevitably turn into nothingness, and everything would collapse. "Let's go." The Yuan race's immortal king spoke. He didn't want to be entangled here and wanted to leave as soon as possible. In reality, they were a bit uncertain and were afraid that something unexpected would happen. Chu Feng had mysteriously risen up out of nowhere and actually faced a Tao ancestor head-on. This made their backs go cold. If that young madman really got rid of the black-robed Tao ancestor and turned around, he would definitely settle things with them. Not a single one of them would be able to escape. Now was the time to escape while he was at a disadvantage. This was the plan of the Yuan race, the fourth tribulation sparrow race, and the Western Paradise Organization. However, Li Su was the first to stand out, blocking the void. Did these people still want to escape? They had to be killed. Then, the other immortal kings also moved, rushing into the heavens to stop the Yuan race, the fourth tribulation sparrow race, and the others. They didn't want them to escape from the heavens. Otherwise, they would definitely meet on the battlefield in the future. These guides would be even more vicious than the strange life form and wouldn't show any mercy to their former comrades. In the outside world, Chu Feng coughed out large mouthfuls of blood several times. He was infuriated and even wanted to pour out the reincarnation earth in the jar. He didn't want it all, and everyone would break up. In the end, this kind of thought was effective. The life form behind him didn't attack him and instead became quiet. Its long fur fell off, and in the end, it even went into hibernation, no longer making any sounds. After breaking free from his predicament, Chu Feng immediately flipped out. In this short period of time, he had been blasted 6 times by the black-robed Tao ancestor's stone steel and slashed many times by his large hand. Not to mention, the great Tao runes continuously exploded on his body, and the Rule Heavenly Sword hacked him until he was dripping with blood. Fortunately, the golden ripples on his body blocked 80% of the damage. In addition, the power surging out of his flesh also helped him escape from certain death. "Die, old man. The stone in the latrine. Die immediately." Chu Feng roared. His fist imprint was like a rainbow, striking out with peerless light. The resplendent fist imprint illuminated the past and present, illuminating countless great universes. It made the realm walls of the heavens seem transparent, and everyone in the world could see his figure. Bang! The black-robed Tao ancestor was forced back, and the stone steel was sent flying. Chi! A wheel of light appeared behind Chu Feng. This was the wonderful 7 treasures technique he had activated with his current strength. Soon, the wheel of light wasn't limited to 7 colors, but had rapidly gained 3. In addition to the ancestral substance of the 5 elements, there was also yin and yang, as well as spatial substance and time substance. In addition, there was soul substance. The first time the wonderful 10 treasures technique appeared, it stunned the world. This was the ancestral substance that the jar and the mysterious creature had supplemented for him, allowing him to push this technique to the extreme domain and infinitely sublimate. Rumble. The wheel of light surpassed the limit of speed, crossing the river of time and flying out. With a squelch, it cut off the black-robed Tao ancestor's shoulder diagonally, and blood splattered everywhere. At the same time, Chu Feng also sensed the sounds of fighting in the Yang realm. Without a word, he directly reached out a large hand into the firmament of the Yang realm. His palm covered the sky and the vast sea of stars. He grasped the entire Yuan race in the palm of his hand. With a squelch, the Yuan race's decaying universe-level creature, as well as the weaker elites of the race, all exploded at once, turning into dust. Even the two peak true immortal-level powerhouses of the Yuan race, who had almost touched the immortal king realm, exploded at the first moment, their bodies and souls scattered. Only the Yuan race's immortal king, who was fighting against the battle rhesus monkey king, wasn't captured and escaped this calamity. However, it was still a temporary survival. Chu Feng's large hand shone, and in an instant he forcibly received the immortal king and grasped him in the palm of his hand. No! The Yuan race's immortal king cried out, incomparably terrified. He really wanted to call out to the black-robed Tao ancestor to save him, so that he wouldn't disappoint those who sought refuge with him. However, the black-robed Tao ancestor's Tao body had just been slashed diagonally, and it happened almost at the same time. His own blood was splashing in the outside world, so how could he care about him? Squelch! The Yuan race's immortal king exploded, turning into a bloody pulp. Then, he burned, and his soul light was completely dissolved. Immortal kings were very powerful. If the Tao ancestor didn't act, this kind of creature would absolutely be invincible, and living for several epochs wouldn't be a problem. But now, a veteran immortal king had been angrily attacked and crushed to death. Chu Feng naturally wouldn't let the Yuan race go. They had long harbored rebellious intentions, and moreover, they had targeted him again and again. They had even harmed Yu Shang in the Yao Yao race. So how could he not settle accounts? Now, he had this kind of strength, and he had to take advantage of the fact that it hadn't faded yet. Almost at the same time, Chu Feng casually swung his hand, and the fourth tribulation sparrow race was once again enveloped within. With a puff, an expanse of bloody light exploded. This so-called coexisting with the world, a race that had gone through 4 great world-destroying tribulations, was almost completely wiped out today. They were all in disarray by the sky-covering hand. In the outside world, the black-robed Tao ancestor roared and growled. He had actually suffered such a great loss today. Was he really going to be in danger? He suddenly raised his head, and his eyes were pitch black like 2 black holes that swallowed all things. Even time wasn't let off, and it was swallowed inside. Who are you trying to scare? Strange creature. You are destined to die in the outside world. It's time for you to fall, shouted Chu Feng. The light wheel that he activated burst forth with 10 different colors. It spun and split the universe apart as it pressed forward to kill. However, this time, the 10-colored light wasn't a spinning slash. It actually violently exploded where the black-robed Tao ancestor was. The first attack of the wonderful 10 treasures technique had chopped off the black-robed Tao ancestor's shoulder, and this time, his entire body exploded. One could imagine how terrifying its power was. Rumble. The black-robed Tao ancestor's body was mutilated. His arms, head, and other parts had all fallen off, and he floated in the void outside the world. He was furious and trembling incessantly. He had actually lost and suffered such a great loss. Without another word, Chu Feng immediately picked up the stone zither, swung it, and directly and violently smashed it down on the Tao ancestor's head. Today, I must slay the Tao ancestor, roared Chu Feng, and his voice shook countless great worlds. Chapter 16:33. Bang! The stone zither smashed into the ground, and true blood splattered everywhere. The black-robed Tao ancestor, who had already been split into pieces, was in an even more miserable state. His torso was scattered everywhere, completely falling apart. Chu Feng's body was like a barbaric dragon as he attacked like lightning. He swung the stone zither in his hand like a pile driver, smashing it nonstop, making the outside world explode. The black-robed Tao ancestor's head was smashed. This battle could be said to be quite bitter. In addition, Chu Feng stamped his feet madly. Golden ripples spread out, causing the black-robed Tao ancestor's broken torso and arms to crack again, and then explode one after another. This scene shocked the world and also frightened the two Tao ancestors fighting against 9 Daoi and Gu Qing, causing their expressions to change. Qi, a 10-colored wheel of light, appeared above Chu Feng's head again. It was like a great Tao axe that could split the heavens and earth, and it suddenly chopped forward. Puff! The black-robed Tao ancestor's resplendent soul light was directly struck, and with a puff, it broke into 2 pieces. The wheel of light shook violently, and with a boom, a part of the soul light was scattered. If it were any other creature, such as a peak immortal king, they would have long since been turned into ashes. However, the black-robed Tao ancestor was incomparably tough and had indestructible characteristics. His soul light flickered, and he reappeared in his original place. His head was also broken, but not destroyed, and it shuttled back and forth in the void. His physical body was indestructible. Although it was smashed into pieces, they immediately pieced together and reformed his Tao body. You still want to live? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. If you don't die now, when will you? Chu Feng was also fighting crazily, using the stone zither like a long knife, chasing after the black-robed Tao ancestor's tattered body without stopping for a moment. The black-robed Tao ancestor was also going crazy. How many years had it been since he had suffered like this? His physical body was split apart, his indestructible soul was shattered, and his blood splattered everywhere. It was truly miserable. Even though his Tao body was indestructible, and he repeatedly repaired his true body and Tao soul, it was always broken by that young villain again and again. I'll let you be high and mighty, looking down on all living beings. Today, Chu Tiandi will beat you all into the dirt. As Chu Feng chased after him, he berated. He really did not take the Tao ancestors seriously. He shouted and killed, constantly putting it into action. The black-robed Tao father was seething with rage, but he truly wasn't strong enough to stop this young thug. This caused an ugly look to appear on his face. He couldn't accept this. Most importantly, he was suffering and becoming one of the pioneers of a brilliant evolutionary civilization. When had he ever been humiliated like this? Today, he finally understood the feelings of the ancestors of the brilliant civilizations that they had destroyed. They were humiliated, exhausted, and in pain. He wanted to leave and escape from this world. He didn't want to be entangled with this young madman anymore. The fact that the black-robed Taoist ancestor had such a thought was enough to show how savage Demon Chu was. He chased after the other party, using the stone zither, ramming Tao ancestor again and again, making his opponent feel even more humiliated. He really couldn't take it anymore. However, the black-robed Tao father discovered that he couldn't flee even if he wanted to. He actually failed. The golden ripples under Chu Feng's feet spread out like invisible sound waves, but also like a pale golden net, squeezing and locking down the world. So much so that the black-robed Tao father's body was becoming slower and slower as he was bound by the golden net. He was horrified. He couldn't beat Chu Feng, but he also couldn't escape. This made him feel deeply uneasy, and a chill ran down his spine. Could it be that his Tao would collapse today and he would face the calamity of being overturned? His heart sank as an ominous premonition arose in his heart. However, he also consoled himself that such an extreme situation wasn't likely to happen. No Tao ancestor could be killed, and it would take a long time to refine them to death. Even a top-notch pioneer of this field would have to go through a lot of trouble to kill other Tao ancestors. Not to mention this thug. His methods were simple, and he clearly knew very little. It was just that his unreasonable attacks were too shocking. As for techniques, he looked down on them from the bottom of his heart. If he had this young monster's power, he would certainly use all kinds of methods to overcome 1,000 caddies with little effort. However, Chu Feng was just that unreasonable. No matter how many wonderful techniques you had, or how many kinds of Tao laws you had, he would directly smash, and kick them. He would either use the stone zither to smash, or use his fist to pound, or use his big feet to kick. Then he would burst out with the great Tao patterns that filled the void outside the world. It was truly a barbaric collision. This was because he was now killing to his heart's content, and he was even high-spirited. He was quite used to this kind of direct confrontation where his fists hit flesh and his feet saw blood. In fact, he quite enjoyed this kind of fighting style. To be able to directly attack and beat up Tao ancestors really made him happy. Jiao Daoyi and Gu Qing were speechless. What kind of mentality did this kid have? He was beating up Tao ancestors. Did he always want to treat them like this? This kind of fighting style of Chu Feng was quite rare in a battle between Tao ancestors. When others attacked, it would be full of flowing lights and vibrant colors, illuminating the universe and the trajectory of the great Tao manifesting. All the universes resonated and rumbled. But when it came to him, it was completely different. It was as if a savage had sneaked into this domain. He was punching and kicking, making his opponent, the Tao ancestor, quite disgraceful. It was one thing to be chased, but it looked like he was hunting. The Tao ancestor had become a fleeing beast. In the Yang realm, in the central heavenly palace, various immortal kings and old patriarchs of various races were watching the great battle outside the world through a treasure mirror. Everyone was dumbfounded. This was a battle between Tao ancestors, an unattainable domain, a realm that people yearned for but couldn't reach, was actually so natural. This was too simple, wasn't it? Even their faces were twitching. They felt that the black-robed Tao ancestor must be in great pain, both physically and mentally. Billions of kilometers away, the eyes of the two Tao ancestors fighting against Jiao Daoyi and Gu Qing were also filled with a faint luster. They were speechless as they watched. They were expressionless, but in their hearts, they sighed for their companion. What kind of situation was this? How could they encounter such an unscrupulous opponent? Of course, they weren't worried. They didn't think that Chu Feng could really kill the black-robed Tao ancestor. At most, he would just beat him to a pulp and then reform him. However, they also seized the opportunity to attack. They wanted to suppress Jiao Daoyi and Gu Qing so that they could help the black-robed Tao ancestor. Old thief, where do you think you're going? Chu Feng shouted from behind. The patterns of light under his feet became more and more concentrated, interweaving into a net in the entire void outside the world. The black-robed Tao ancestor was infuriated. How long had it been? Had he already been looked down upon to such an extent? A little brat said he would kill him every time he opened his mouth, and even called him an old thief. Bang! He really couldn't run. He was covered by the golden net, and his movements became increasingly slow. After Chu Feng caught up to him, he struck out with an ultimate fist, causing his arms to be in so much pain that they almost exploded. Following that, the stone zither came crashing down again, and the light will also suppressed him, exploding in front of him. Even with the black stone tablet as a shield and the ancient painting scroll that could contain a large world to protect himself, he still suffered a great loss. His 7 apertures were dripping with blood, and his body was covered in cracks. He was weakening, and if this continued, he would become weaker and weaker. If this continued for a long time, he might really die. In the distance, even Jiao and Gu Qing were dumbstruck. This kid was too reckless, and he could actually do this. He was beating up a Tao ancestor. The 2 old men were speechless. Could they still happily bully him in the future? A single mishap, and they would probably be beaten up by this kid instead. As for the 2 great Tao ancestors of the strange race. They felt very upset when they saw this, and then their anger surged. Kill! The two of them went berserk. In particular, the Tao ancestor who was fighting Gu Qing did everything he could to quickly end the battle and suppress Gu Qing. He even wanted to take Gu Qing to Chu Feng in the shortest time possible and let the black-robed Tao ancestor escape. In the end, they still believed that Chu Feng couldn't kill the black-robed creature, so they didn't attack immediately. "I don't believe I can't destroy you," Chu Feng whispered. In the following period of time, he repeatedly turned half of the black-robed Tao ancestor's body into ashes. He used all his methods and went on a killing spree. However, he couldn't help but sigh. A pathway-opening creature was really in a kind of indestructible domain. Even if their souls exploded, they could quickly reappear. As the saying went, the Tao body and true spirit could be reassembled after the collapse. It could be said that the black-robed Tao ancestor had suffered unimaginable pain. At this realm, with such an identity, he had actually experienced all the legendary torture. This kind of torture was truly terrifying, and the kings of the Yang realm were petrified. One eyesore. They were actually lucky enough to witness the Tao ancestor being beaten to death. Bang! During this period, Chu Feng took out a hand and reached toward the Yang realm. He slapped a few clans and dealt with those traitors. In any case, he couldn't kill the black-robed Tao ancestor for a while, so he began to clean up the sect. Suddenly, his heart stirred. After the last slap, he killed the direct descendants and core members of the Western Paradise Organization. Then he grabbed the organization's immortal king half to death and carried him to the outer realm. That was because he thought of a tool that might be able to kill the Tao ancestor. "Where's the time furnace?" Chu Feng secretly shouted. That thing left a deep impression on him. It was very evil and very terrifying, and it could easily cast a psychological shadow on people. But now that he thought about it, it might be a special magic tool to deal with the Tao ancestor, or even deal with the end of the path. It contained a secret spell to kill the strongest. Heaven can't bury those who can't be buried in the floating earth of the four poles. Yin and Yang are cut down, and the fire of the sky is drawn. At that time, in front of the sky-piercing waterfall, it was the Western Paradise Organization's people who were selling it. The price they gave couldn't be considered too outrageous, which was the same as selling the furnace at a discount. That was because from ancient times until now, as long as it was a creature that obtained this tool, not a single one had a good end. Even Li Su, this prehistoric Black Hand, had almost died back then. In the end, he had an accident and transformed, sealing himself and locking himself in a coffin connected to the Gradine realm. The Western Paradise Organization's predecessors had comprehended a wonderful technique from the time furnace, and their might had shaken the Yang realm. But at the same time, the organization had also lost several important figures, and their leader had died inexplicably. Therefore, they hated and feared this object, and were also somewhat reluctant to part with it. Every once in a while, they would deliberately abandon the time furnace, wanting to see the fate of others who obtained it. They wanted to explore the terrifying truth it contained, as well as the true meaning of the unparalleled evolution technique that might be hidden within. Yes, it's in our mountain gate, and we haven't brought it out. The Western Paradise Organization's leader from the last era said, feeling great fear in his heart. He had personally witnessed the tragic deaths of the Yuan clan, the Fourth Tribulation Sparrow race, and other immortal kings. He had even seen the black-robed Tao ancestor being beaten up. He immediately lost the will to resist, and he didn't want to be stubborn. After Chu Feng searched his soul, he slapped him to death with one slap. Then he stretched out a hand and entered a certain famous mountain in the Yang realm, grabbing a fist-sized furnace. That's right, it's this. Back then, Chu Feng had weighed it with his own hands. It was precisely this thing. The time furnace looked small, but the space inside was actually very large, enough to accommodate magnificent mountains and rivers. Without saying anything further, Chu Feng picked up the black-robed Tao ancestor that had been beaten to tatters and stuffed him into the furnace. F***CK. The black-robed Dao ancestor couldn't remain calm at that time. It wasn't because Chu Feng's humiliating posture provoked him. It wasn't because he was about to explode. Instead, it was because he was terrified at the first moment, feeling incomparably dangerous. If he was stuffed inside, he might die. He bellowed. Because of this, he once again fought and risked his life against Chu Feng. In the end, he didn't even hesitate to break his body and escape with the upper half of his body. In the distance, no matter who saw this scene, they all felt that Chu Feng was too ferocious. He didn't want to directly stuff a Dao ancestor into a baffling little metal furnace. Chu Feng didn't chase after the upper half of his body. Instead, he hurriedly threw the lower half into the furnace in a swift and decisive manner. He was afraid that the black-robed Dao ancestor would detonate this half of his body and reform it in the distance. After Chu Feng smoothly threw the lower half of his opponent into the furnace, he let out a long sigh. He could test it now. In the distance, the black-robed Dao ancestor's complexion changed as he was still unable to completely escape from the golden net. This was because the lower half of his true body couldn't self-destruct and reform this time. He had completely lost contact with it. His heart sank, and an ominous premonition arose in him. Was something going to happen? At this level, his Dao body was indestructible, and his soul was immortal. Therefore, even if his body was damaged and exploded, he could always reform in the end. However, once he completely lost a part of his true body and soul light, it could be considered an enormous price and loss. Now, he encountered such a situation. Chu Feng urged the time furnace. Fragments of time danced in the air, and the flames of the great Dao leaped. Crackling sounds came from the furnace. The lower half of the Dao ancestor's body was really burning. Although I'm lacking the four extremities floating soil and so on, it's still effective at the moment. This thing was prepared to deal with the Pathfinders, and even against the life forms at the end of the road. Chu Feng's heart shook violently. He believed that the time furnace couldn't just be a kind of artifact cast from Mother Gold. It most likely hid a gargantuan secret that was extremely terrifying. As the saying went, as long as the Dao ancestor didn't die, it would be difficult to kill him in a short time. This common understanding might be broken today. Not good. I am in danger. The black-robed Dao ancestor growled. Although he didn't know the situation inside the furnace, his instincts were still sharp. He felt that he was weak. His Dao body and soul seemed to be permanently missing a part. That was the essence of the flesh and blood contained in the lower half of his body, as well as the origin of his soul. Had the other party actually obliterated a part of it? He immediately disregarded his status and shouted for the other two Dao ancestors to come and save him. Quick, I feel a calamity approaching. There's actually a sign of destruction. He roared. The other two Dao ancestors were shaken. How is this possible? How could a little brat threaten the Pathfinders in a short time? Jiu Daoi and Gu Qing were also dumbfounded. What had that brat done? Then, the two of them attacked frantically, not letting the two Dao ancestors of the bizarre race leave to rescue him. No matter what, they had to buy time for Chu Feng and kill a Dao ancestor. Meanwhile, the two Dao ancestors of the bizarre race attacked frantically and fought bloody battles. They wanted to kill their way over to where Chu Feng was, because if they let him succeed, it would cause the top life form that walked out of the bizarre wretched soil to die and be killed by a young man. That would be a big joke. Hurry up, the black-robed Dao ancestor shouted. He was really anxious. In just a short time, Chu Feng attacked again and blew him up twice. At this time, Chu Feng was grabbing his arm and shoving him into the furnace. Damn it was too terrifying. Even someone as strong as the black-robed Dao ancestor was about to have a mental breakdown. He could clearly feel that he was going to be cremated. Moreover, it seemed like he could really succeed. With a pop, he cut off one of his arms. Like a lizard escaping with its tail cut off, he left with his arm dripping with blood. Even though he wanted to destroy that arm at the first moment and let it explode and then reform it in the distance, he still failed in the end. That area was imprisoned by Chu Feng and also covered by the golden grid. Chu Feng calmly picked up that arm and threw it into the furnace. Then, Chu Feng revealed a smile and once again charged at the black-robed Tao ancestor, who said that the high and mighty creatures that looked down on the heavens wouldn't be afraid. When they really reached a certain situation, their mental state would also explode. Now, the black-robed Tao ancestor was like this. His scalp went numb, and he was deeply horrified. That young murderer came again and grabbed him, wanting to stuff him into the cremation furnace. Moreover, that furnace could really kill him and cremate him. How many people wouldn't collapse when they were grabbed like this and forced to do so? I'd hashtag you. The black-robed Tao ancestor screamed in terror. Chapter 16:34. The black-robed creature struggled fiercely and fought with his life on the line, but in the end, his blood still splattered across the starry skies. He could only use tail severing once more and escape with half of his forearm. Now, not only was the lower half of his body gone, but even his 2 palms were gone. How could he fight like this? Although he could be reborn from a single drop of blood and rebuild his body, he could no longer retrieve the source of his great Tao and spiritual light he had lost. At his level, each drop of blood was extremely precious, and each soul flame was exceptionally brilliant and precious. He couldn't afford to lose them. Normally, Tao ancestors were reserved. Not only their temperament, but also their various sources were hidden within their flesh and soul. What he had lost now was his core foundation. If he continued to brag like this, a tragedy was bound to happen. However, that madman kept on chasing him. He couldn't beat him, and he couldn't escape either. This made him feel even more humiliated and furious. He was a grand Tao ancestor, the pathfinder of a bizarre race, but now he was such a coward. Only now do I understand the correct way to use this furnace. Chu Feng muttered to himself in satisfaction as he chased. The black-robed creature's mood was completely different. It was difficult to extinguish his anger, and he was depressed and powerless. In particular, the young murderer didn't use any Tao arts or divine abilities. He just wanted to personally carry him and stuff him into the furnace. It was too terrifying. What kind of creature was he? How could he be cremated like a mortal? Moreover, he was still alive and hadn't died, yet he was about to be burned. He shouldn't be buried in peace. He thought of the various methods he had used to deal with other evolved civilizations. But now, he himself had become the greatest heretic. The black-robed Tao ancestor's face was deathly pale. He was truly dizzy and couldn't take it anymore. Fellow Taoist, I advise you to be kind and let go of your obsession. Be free as soon as possible and take the initiative to die, Chu Feng said. Were these even human words? The black-robed creature was filled with grief and indignation. Who was the bizarre race here? Who was the ominous monster, cremating a living Tao ancestor and wanting him to commit suicide? Just the thought of this situation made him collapse. This abnormal opponent was too terrifying. He firmly believed that Chu Feng was the strange, ominous, and disastrous one. He was not a normal Tao ancestor-level creature at all. Chu Feng bemoaned the state of the universe and pitted the fate of mankind. He sighed and said, "Since I can't reform you, I can only cremate you." Bang! Puff! The black-robed creature was constantly beaten to pieces, and parts of its body were stuffed into the time furnace. He finally couldn't take it anymore. He roared angrily and shouted for help. "I let you all pretend to be big-tailed wolves, believing yourself infallible and high and mighty. Now, Chu Qiandi is telling you, pretend to be happy for a moment, and then go to the crematorium in style." The black-robed creature roared angrily and struggled. Only a small half of its body remained. It struggled free with great difficulty, leaving behind another large chunk of flesh. Kill! Off in the distance, the 2 Tao fathers erupted with power and attacked with all their might, wanting to break free from Jiu Dao and Gu Qing's entanglement. They couldn't see anything wrong with it. If they delayed any longer, their black-robed companion might really die. Finally, the two arrived. They fought fiercely with Ju Dao and Gu Qing while breaking into the area where Chu Feng was. However, the golden grid blocked them. The two broke through with great difficulty and stepped into this swamp-like area. "Hey Hong, how are you?" the silver-haired Dao father asked while fighting with Ju Dao. "I'm about to be cremated. What do you think about me?" The black-robed creature was very dissatisfied. These two of his kind actually took so long to come to his aid. Couldn't they see that he was in danger? The two Dao fathers were somewhat speechless. Even now, they still couldn't believe that a little brat could eliminate a Dao father in a short time. "Kill." Ju Dao's eyes lit up. He had seen through the essence of the matter and believed that Chu Feng had great potential. He should continue to work hard and truly slaughter this strange monster. Gu Qing also sighed. "This old man is going all out. I hope that little friend can break the legend, kill the Dao Father, and spread the heavenly might of our race." Then he went all out. From time to time, he would be beaten up by his opponent, the golden-haired Dao Father, until his face was covered in blood. He didn't even care about his face anymore. Gu Qing was split open from the space between his brows. His body was split into two halves, and his blood flowed out. However, he was very tenacious. He endured the pain, and before he had fully recovered, the two halves of his body rushed over to fight his opponent to the death. Bang! Gu Qing's body collapsed. His body had been pierced through and broken into several pieces. The new Emperor Gu Qing was quite miserable. He wasn't much inferior to the black-robed creature from before. From time to time, his Dao would crack, his body would collapse, and his soul light would explode like fireworks. The only fortunate thing was that his opponent didn't have the means to immediately obliterate him. Even though there was a great disparity between the two sides, he still needed time to settle and consume. The Dao Father was truly terrifying. Their indestructible attribute endowed them with a unique foundation. As long as they didn't come out, it would be difficult to kill them. On the other side, Ju Dao was much more tyrannical than him. He suppressed the silver-haired Dao Father, and from time to time, he would use his bronze spear to poke a bloody hole in his opponent's body. At the same time, the heaven burial diagram above his head was rotating, ready to descend at any time and swallow the silver-haired creature. Chu Feng looked back and was somewhat angry after seeing Gu Qing's miserable state. Gu Qing collapsed again. This time, the golden-haired Dao Father reached out and grabbed his severed head. He carried him and rushed to a place not far from Chu Feng, surging with killing intent. Gu Qing was the new emperor, but he was carried here by his head. He was dripping with blood, and his mouth was full of bloody foam. Even his teeth were dyed red. He was in an extremely sorry state and looked very sinister. Chu Feng was furious. He looked at the golden-haired Dao Father and shouted, "Release Senior Gu." He appreciated Gu Qing's kindness. This old man's personality was a bit soft, and he even lived a very low life. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone into hibernation in this era. But today, he was very unyielding. Gu Qing not only took the initiative to face the enemy, but also joined forces with Ju Dao to fight against the three great Dao Fathers. And after seeing Chu Feng's strength, he didn't hesitate to suffer dozens of Emperor's tears and Dao collapses to buy time for him. Only then did he fall in such a miserable state. Bang! 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 Chu Feng swung his fists continuously, blowing up the black-robed Dao Father named He Hong, and filling a large area of blood and bones into the furnace of time. He quickly destroyed this person's fighting spirit and final battle strength, so that he could save Gu Qing and get rid of the golden-haired Dao Father. He Hong roared in anger. He was too miserable. This time, only his head and the parts above his chest and shoulders were left. The rest of his torso and limbs were all in the cremation furnace. At this moment, he felt like crying. How long had his life been? How could he fall to such a state? Chu Feng gradually relaxed. He Hong was completely crippled, and he was enveloped by the golden net. He shouldn't be able to escape. He decided to attack and get rid of the golden-haired creature, and then kill another Dao Father. "Senior, hold on, I'm coming," he roared. In reality, the golden-haired Tao Father had also arrived with Gu Qing's head. There was nothing to say. When the two met, they directly collided. Chu Feng let out a long roar. The stone zither, the ultimate fist, the 10 wonderful techniques, and the golden net all blasted toward the golden-haired Tao Father like a flood. In addition, he also brought out the golden characters on the stone jar. They were densely packed and covered the fist imprints, and then spread to every part of his body. Today, he had unparalleled battle strength. After being strengthened by the jar and the female ghost, his past techniques were all infinitely more powerful. Therefore, his current attack power shocked the Tao Father. It was boundlessly terrifying. The golden-haired Tao Father's heart sank the moment he came into contact with Chu Feng. He had a bad feeling. He finally knew why He Hong was in such a miserable state. This young monster was too abnormal. The power that gushed out was simply too terrifying. It was very difficult to resist. In the fierce battle, in the process of moving beyond the restraints of time, Chu Feng tore off one of his arms and stuffed it into the furnace of time. Gu Qing's head was thus freed, and it quickly merged with his torso. He recovered his Tao Father body and immediately began to fight the enemy. "Let's go." After losing an arm, the golden-haired Tao Father called out to his kin. He knew that the situation was hopeless. The three of them had actually lost. If they delayed any longer, they might all die here. However, he couldn't be the first to escape. He was suppressed by Chu Feng and temporarily locked in the battlefield. On the other side, Jui poked another bloody hole in the silver-haired Tao Father's body. His killing power began to explode. He was provoked by Chu Feng into wanting to kill a strange Tao Father. However, when the silver-haired creature saw Jui's heaven burial diagram light up, he spat out densely packed, great Tao runes. His tongue was like thunder, and he quickly broke free from the golden net in the void and fled. This old monster was actually hiding his strength earlier. He had a trick up his sleeve, but he didn't use it. He originally wanted to give me a fatal blow, but he hid it until now. In the end, he used it on the way, Jui said faintly as he chased after him. "Where do you think you're going?" Chu Feng shouted. He also chased after the golden-haired Tao Father. At this moment, the golden-haired Tao Father was in a very sorry state. He had lost an arm and was suddenly a lot weaker. Even Gu Qing dared to chase after him. Wong. Space-time collapsed. The golden-haired Tao Father's figure dimmed. After he rushed out of the golden net, he naturally used a supreme divine ability to escape. Now that things had come to this, he could no longer care about He Hong. Everyone had to flee for their lives. However, just as he disappeared and was about to become completely blurry, Jui suddenly came back. He pierced through him with his spear and stabbed him out, causing him to be covered in blood. Jui's pursuit of the silver-haired Tao Father had failed. That person had been hiding his strength, but he was actually very strong. When he saw that the situation was not right, he disappeared faster than anyone else. Therefore, Jui decisively came back to attack, giving the golden-haired Tao Father a deep chill. Inextinguishable great Tao runes rippled in the wound, attacking his divine soul. In the end, he was a Tao Father-level entity. Even though he was injured, the golden-haired Tao Father still had strange methods. Without saying a word, he turned into Tao runes, and his figure became blurry again. "You injured Senior Gu, causing him to continuously crack and collapse his Tao, and you still want to leave?" Chu Feng shouted. His hostility towards this person was even greater than his desire to kill He Hong. After all, he had always been suppressing the black-robed creature, and even wanted to cremate him. He had the upper hand and never suffered. The golden-haired Tao Father was different. He had been incomparably powerful from the beginning, and he had even carried Gu Qing's head to show off his power. Chu Feng had completely remembered him. Chu Feng chased after him regardless of everything. Now that he had opened his fiery eyes, he could practically see through all realms. With the support of a mysterious power, he could see through all truths. He immediately discovered the golden-haired Tao Father's escape trajectory. He had indeed rushed out very far, and if he chased after him, it was likely that he would not make it in time. "Senior, lend me your copper spear," Chu Feng said to Jioi. The old man tossed it over without a second word. He didn't even ask what he wanted to do. With a boom, Chu Feng pulled back the only string of the stone zither and used the spear as a thick arrow. He knocked an arrow and was about to shoot the Tao Father. Was this even possible? Jioi and Gu Qing stared blankly. Chu Feng used the zither as a bow and the spear as an arrow. With a rumble, he pulled the string into the shape of a full moon, released his fingers, and directly shot it out. With the support of the stone zither, the arrow was too terrifying. It shot through the great 1,000 worlds and emitted inextinguishable symbols. What was even more terrifying was that it seemed to be affecting time. Ahead, the golden-haired Tao Father took a step forward and retreated into the boundless space. It was like a great world had disappeared into the distance. He felt that the people behind him couldn't catch up to him. However, the next moment he was horrified. He felt that the time around him wasn't right. Fragments of time actually soared over a large area and filled the air. Time seemed to be flowing backward. He even felt that he was falling back. Then, there was an arrow that surpassed everything, bursting with resplendent splendor as it rushed straight at him. With a puff, he was shot by the spear that had transformed into an arrow. Then he directly exploded. The golden-haired Tao Father was actually blown up by an arrow. Flesh and blood flew everywhere, and soul light splashed everywhere. The scene was extremely terrifying. In the Yang realm, all the kings and supreme elders of various races were incomparably shocked. What had they seen? Someone had used an elegant object as a bow and shot a Tao Father to death. Jioi and Gu Qing were also astonished. He actually succeeded? They stopped the golden-haired powerhouse. "I'll go watch over He Hong." Gu Qing turned around and left. He didn't forget that there was still someone else. Meanwhile, Chu Feng and Jioi directly rushed to a dilapidated universe that had been dead for who knew how many years. They immediately locked down the scene, afraid that the golden-haired creature would recover and escape. In reality, the power of this arrow was far more terrifying than they had imagined. The golden-haired Tao Father didn't recover for a long time. His soul was scattered, and he was in a dazed state. So much so that when he came back to his senses, his condition wasn't right. He was rather terrified and even horrified. This was because in the instant he was shot and exploded, he vaguely saw a blurry figure in the spear. He was so intimidated that he didn't dare to move at all. "It's that person! It's that person!" he roared in his heart. His emotions fluctuated violently, but in the end, he didn't dare to call out that person's name directly. He knew that this spear was refined by that person. Therefore, even if there weren't any special rune methods left behind, he still felt as if he had been targeted by a primeval beast and couldn't move. A figure was merely a replay of the old scenes of the past, yet it made him like this. When he finally began to condense soul light and wanted to restore his Tao body, he discovered that he was imprisoned and bound. Then, the Demon King Chu Feng was stuffing him into the furnace. No matter how he erupted, no matter how he resisted, and even if he destroyed himself indiscriminately, it was useless. Under the joint suppression of two great powerhouses, his efforts were futile. The golden-haired Tao Father was directly stuffed into the cremation furnace. "Ah!" he screamed, but with a clang, the furnace lid was sealed shut by Chu Feng. No matter what he shouted, it was useless. Boom! Suddenly, a shocking change came from another direction. Gu Qing couldn't watch over He Hong. This old and strange Tao Father had detonated the blood sacrifice of the black steel that Chu Feng had interrupted earlier. No one would have thought that the steel hit a drop of indescribable black true blood. In an instant, it engulfed the entire space-time and caused all the great worlds to go dark. Gu Qing retreated at once. He was terrified and didn't dare to touch it. Then, He Hong's remaining head successfully escaped with the help of the terrifying black blood and disappeared in an instant. This old schemer survived in the end and escaped. Nine Daos stomped his foot in anger. Even though He Hong was crippled and was inferior to an ordinary Dao Father, it was still infuriating that the duck that was about to be eaten had flown away again. Gu Qing was ashamed and didn't want to say anything. However, Chu Feng shook his head and said, "This guy can really endure. I was about to beat him to death earlier, but he didn't use this trump card. He waited for the most crucial moment to use it on me." In reality, this was He Hong's plan. He really wasn't confident earlier and wanted to wait until Chu Feng was at his most relaxed to give him a vicious blow. But he was scared by the monster Chu Feng, who shot the golden-haired Dao Father and captured him alive, then stuffed him into the crematorium. He was afraid that he wouldn't have another chance if he didn't fight for his life. So he decisively sacrificed the strange and terrifying drop of blood and ran away when no one was watching. Don't run. You've lost the lower half of your body. How dare you run when you're missing a part? Are you even a man? Chu Feng taunted and quickly swept around, wanting to hunt him down. Unfortunately, even with his fiery eyes, he couldn't find any trace of He Hong. His opponent had used the black blood as a lure to escape. The effect of the blood escape was shocking. "You thick-browed, big-eyed bastard. How dare you trick me and use the black blood to escape? Don't let me see you again," Chu Feng shouted. He Hong heard this, and the veins on his forehead bulged, but he definitely wouldn't turn back. He plunged into the darkness and disappeared. The outside world was quiet. Of the 3 Dao Fathers who came from the source of the oddities, one was injured, one was crippled, and one was left behind. The battle had come to an end. Overall, the outcome of this battle was quite impressive. Burned to death. Zhou Daoi and Gu Qing came over and stared at the time furnace in Chu Feng's hand. They had accidentally let He Hong go, and they didn't want the golden-haired Dao Father to survive. Chu Feng shook his head. "No, this monster is really resistant to fire. It's been a long time, and I've only burned off a layer of skin. I don't know how long it'll take to destroy the Dao bones and soul-burning light." But he also mentioned that if he had the yin-yang dual wood, it would speed things up. Soon after, he had an idea. He responded to the yin-yang dual Dao fruit. In a split second, he used it as a guide to absorb the 2 types of yin-yang ancestral substances that resonated with each other and poured them into the furnace. "It's working." Chu Feng observed and saw that the golden-haired Dao Father was being burned more and more miserably. His flesh was shriveled, and he was constantly struggling. As for the flames of the Great Void and the flames of the ancient Yin, Chu Feng could also deal with them. His 10 Wonderful Treasures technique contained such things, and he had absorbed them in the supreme Forbidden Land. Rumble. When the 10 Wonderful Treasures technique shone brilliantly, the 2 types of flames poured into the furnace, and the originally gentle flames immediately flourished. "Awu!" The golden-haired Dao Father immediately screamed. He felt that his bones were about to be burned to pieces, and his soul light was severely damaged. It seemed as if he was on the verge of destruction. "It would be great if I had the 4 extremes floating soil. I could thoroughly test the quality of the time furnace," Chu Feng said to himself. 4 extremes floating soil. Zhou Daoi revealed a strange expression when he heard this. "Let me take a look. I might have it." Then, he started to take off his black and tattered shoes. Chu Feng really couldn't stand it and quickly retreated. Gu Qing was also speechless. What kind of habit was this? Zhou Daoi poured out some dirt from his tattered shoes with a strange smile. He told Chu Feng that this should be the 4 extremes floating soil. "What's going on? You have this kind of thing in your shoes." Even Gu Qing couldn't believe it. "Of course." Zhou Daoi nodded proudly. In the past, his flesh, Dao bones, and so on had all left home. He had once run to extremely distant places and even went to the heavens. In the long years, he had wandered around everywhere, and he suspected that he had also set foot in the 4 extremes floating soil. He had stepped on some mud, but he didn't pour out at all. What the hell? After hearing this, Chu Feng didn't know what to say. How big was this person's heart? He didn't even clean up the strange soil in his shoes. How could it be comfortable? "I was thinking that I would wait until I had time to study it, and then I forgot about it," Zhou Daoi said. This was the origin. So, He could now pour out this special substance from his tattered shoes. Chu Feng cursed inwardly. How many years had passed, and you haven't changed your shoes? The wine was old and fragrant, and this soil had been stuck inside for so long. It was probably quite strong. The four extremes floating soil entered the furnace, and the golden-haired Tao ancestor screamed miserably. Regardless of whether it was his soul light or Tao bones, they were directly burned, and he turned into a flaming man. Several kinds of substances gathered, and the time furnace shone brilliantly. Moreover, it let out some kind of sacrificial sound, and the golden-haired Tao ancestor exploded on the spot. His soul light and Tao bones were quickly burned to ashes. Chu Feng sucked in a breath of cold air and felt his hair stand on end. Gu Qing's face was also deathly pale. Was this furnace really a cremation furnace specially made to burn important people? Jiu Daoi sighed. Do you know why I kept the four extremes floating soil? Because it's too evil. I felt that it was originally bone ash, and I suspected that it was left behind after a supreme being was burned. Therefore, it could perhaps be used as a medicinal primer. Now it seems that it is even more terrifying than I imagined. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.